Hello, this is your Right Geek, honorary man king, and leader of the Awkward Co-op Squad, here for my birthday stream. Now, what's going to happen tonight is pretty much going to be formless. I don't have anything specific planned, except for a few questions that just occurred to me based on some things I was listening to today. And also based on some things that I know my guest, number one Marmaduke fan, is interested in. I'll be throwing some questions his way regarding those interests, and that's kind of how it's going to go. If you are listening, you can also post in the chat if you have any questions that you would like us to discuss. Then we can do that. But mainly, this is just for fun, since I was just discussing offline that since I have an immune condition and my mom has half a lung, we're still kind of in quarantine because of the coof. So I can't really have a birthday party. So this is like my version of a birthday party. So we're just going to shoot the stuff. Okay, Punchy says he doesn't know if his mic is working. He's on his laptop.
Okay.
All right.
Well, dang. Punchy's like really mysterious. Like I've interacted with him a lot, but I've never like heard his voice yet. So.
Yeah, I don't even know what he sounds like either. All right. Okay, so the first topic for just general discussion that I want to put out there involves something I was listening to just about an hour ago when I was eating my dinner, and it was a video on Thinking Critical's channel that was talking about really good comics that ruin comics, and basically what he meant by that is that when these comics came out, you know, they were groundbreaking and original, and they have a lot of respect. They're seminal comics, but in the wake of their publication, writers have kind of tried to emulate those seminal comics to the detriment of comics as a whole. So I just wanted to throw out to you, number one Marmaduke fan, and anyone who happens to be listening, what do you think are some of the seminal comics or comics events that you think may have actually ruined comics, even though at the time they were fairly excellent comics?
All right, let me think. Maybe the return of Superman. I actually like the death of Superman quite a bit, but the return of Superman wasn't the first time a death was undone for a major hero, but I feel like after it just became expected that eventually they were going to undo any death. Like I remember for a period of about 10 years, it was a running gag that they would never bring Jason Todd back, and yet that gets undone. And almost any time I enter into, what would it be, like late 90s, early 2000s comics, that era, I don't think that's considered Bronze Age, basically like modern age. Like there'll always be like someone coming back, and you know they'll be joking about, oh, you were dead and we mourned you, but ha ha ha, people come back, right? And
people come back, yeah.
It's basically trying to get around the problem of ruining narrative immersion by making death meaningless, by trying to put a lampshade on it. And I don't envy writers who have to do it. I don't know how I would do it. Like the thing that would make most sense to me would be to like have a crying wife say, I mourned you, I grieved for you, and I moved on, and now you just come waltzing back, right?
Right.
but in our contemporary situation, it's just a joke. And very rarely you see manga do it too. And when manga writers do it, it has the exact same effect of just undoing whatever impact there was earlier. And I guess the two that everyone always throws out when this topic comes up are Frank Miller and Alan Moore. Like those are the ones I always see mentioned as the big influential writers of the 80s who after them you can tell people were trying to be edgy and to be the next Frank Miller, or the next Alan Moore. For me, Alan Moore, I respect Alan Moore. I really hate V for Vendetta, the movie especially, because I just feel like it's a bad fan fiction for 1984. So, despite my respect for Alan Moore, I just like feel, I don't know, like the phlegm coming to my Alan Moore. Yeah. I can't really think of really big examples beyond that. Maybe for me personally, when they tried to bring Green Arrow back in the 2000s sometime, I remember that was the last superhero comic I read for about 10 years. I forced myself to read it. I was just in pain, and it was my first time as a teenager realizing they don't even take this seriously. They're making fun of, goofy old comics. They think they're so smart, and this is so pretentious, and it's so stupid. And I didn't read another superhero comic basically until your boy Zach's channel came up, and he started recommending stuff to me.
Right. So you mentioned Alan Moore and Frank Miller, and actually the video that I'm bouncing off of also mentioned them. They mentioned specifically Dark Knight Returns, and they said that because of Dark Knight Returns, everyone's trying to make Batman all dark and gritty now. And it's kind of losing sight of, like, I just read this week on your recommendation, just a collection of some of Denny O'Neil's Batman. And it's like a completely different Batman.
He was just a nice guy.
Yeah, he's just a nice guy. Yeah. And like, I'm actually going to do a video on it on Thursday, because he's just a nice guy. And the collection that I managed to find, it was a Ra's al Ghul collection, and he had this kind of like underdog storyline where it was like him and a couple of other regular people against this guy who could resurrect himself from the dead, and I was like, this is cool. This is cool beans. It's like, it's a standard, the hero is the underdog, but somehow he's going to triumph storyline. And that kind of stuff, they don't really, it seems like I haven't read a whole lot of more recent Batman comics, but the impression I get from people who have is that now everyone's trying to be dark. Everyone's trying to be gritty. They're all trying to recapture that sort of Frank Miller aspect of Batman without trying to do anything original or do their own take on the character.
Right. He's a brooder.
Yeah.
And I feel like the animated series, which I really love, may have helped cement that. I feel like in the animated series, kind of the tragedy they were going for is that this guy is deeply compassionate towards people, but he doesn't know how to relate to anyone in his own life. So he's basically like the bad, tough dad in the animated series. Like I distinctly remember, and they had this really early on, like the Christmas episode was like the very second episode they did, and they just had this running gag that he's a Scrooge and he doesn't really celebrate Christmas, right? And then he has like the whole family breakup between him and Dick because they're both in love with Barbara, and because that series was so influential, now kind of the tragic, lonely figure of Batman has become a popular thing. And it's noteworthy that like later iterations, like Young Justice, they decided to play that down and not have it be, like these, rather than have him be like an abusive dad, they had him be like a really good dad type of figure. I feel like the temptation is, if you're writing Batman, you want him to be tragic. But if Batman's like a mentor for Robin, or if he's a secondary character, then they emphasize the coolness of Batman, or like how neat it would be to meet Batman. So I don't know. He's always been a character who's had, part of what I love about Batman and Robin and the Joker is that they've had all of these different interpretations. So like I like the new Joker movie because it was just a different take on the Joker, but I never like it when one of those takes becomes the only take. Like I don't want every version of the Joker to be Heath Ledger Joker.
Right. Or the most recent Joker.
Yeah.
But
psychopathic time lord Joker. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to see that movie, even though I'm not too much of a DC girl, and I was very, very impressed with it. in the sense that I knew what they were trying to do, and they accomplished it. So I was like, whoa! When I walked out of that movie, I was deeply disturbed. But yeah, like you're saying, if that became like the standard of Joker that everyone follows, then it would get kind of tired after a while.
And I feel like if DC keeps doing one-off movies, they might be able to play into this. Like that Joker wouldn't work in a Justice League movie because he's very like that Joker was basically if a real person became the Joker, that's what it would be like in like our world. But that wouldn't work with Superman, flying around and just picking him up. But if they have like all of these one-off movies, maybe they can keep having different takes on these characters. Like I miss some of the old fun old days, right? Like I still want to see a movie where Joker's threatening Gotham City with a gigantic cream pie. Like he's almost harmless. There's an old Golden Age comic from the Dick Sprang era where the plot of the comic is that Joker has gone insane, implying that they think that Joker is sane all the time. Like he's just a totally normal crook who just happens to like dressing up like a clown most of the time. And then just recently he started going insane and making what is it? Like he started making sandcastles and stuff. It was a great comic. Punchy!
Punchy! Hello. We were just talking about how we don't know how you sound like.
Oh, well, I'm not really sure how I sound like either. I'm not sure if my microphone's working. Is it?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, is the audio okay?
Can you hear Marmaduke?
I can hear you okay. Yeah, I can hear you great.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
I guess that works. Hello.
I'm still just trying to place you as like Australian or British. The mean names that I want to throw at you.
Actually.
Virginia?
Yes, I'm from the city of Quickville.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
And I'm
now,
just
is that okay? Do you own that amiibo in your profile picture? Do you own a piece of internet history?
Oh God, no! I wish. I've actually never actually bought anything off of Chris Chan. I was hoping to at one point. I've made my own custom ones, but I haven't actually bought any official swag yet. So, unfortunately.
Okay, so I assume you've been listening. So you've been listening to the topic that we've started with, which is good comics that thereafter ruin comics for all time. So
I've been listening, rapidly listening to you and Marmaduke discussing these interesting comics. Unfortunately, I don't know any good comics. My extent of comic book reading, in the 90s, the sort of gritty 90s, was Lobo, and that was about it.
Did you ever get the Wisdom of Lobo?
Which one was that?
It was I've never seen one, but I've heard about it because it just says the Wisdom of Lobo on the front, and it's a 100% blank comic book.
No, but that sounds like that's the sort of thing that Lobo would do. So that was my 90s edgy, gritty, dark experience. I guess in retrospect it might be kind of brilliant because Lobo. I don't know if you're. Marmaduke doesn't seem familiar. Are you familiar with him, right, Geek or chat for anyone?
No. Just as you are not so familiar with comics, I am only marginally familiar with weak stuff, so...
Right. Well, basically, Lobo... he used to be a sort of, like, campy space clown character or something back during the Silver Age, I think. But he was rebooted as one of these, gritty, edgy 90s characters. But he was treated as a sort of really sly, over-the-top parody of the gritty, edgy 90s characters. So he was extremely violent and extremely sweary and complete degenerate. But it was played off in a very good-natured and humorous way, if that makes any sense. So you kind of got the best of both worlds. You got the extreme '90s edge and dark and gritty, but you also came away feeling good about yourself in the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? If
following kind of like that, like I know him basically from his appearance in the Superman cartoon where they had to like substitute, like he'd always be saying like Forg and Frag.
Oh yeah, he does that in the comics too. He doesn't swear, but he has his own sort of space biker slang, like frack and frag, and like a Battlestar Galactica kind of thing.
The other one that pops to mind actually is Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which I've read. I really like it, but you can tell after Scott Pilgrim versus the World, there was like a default Scott Pilgrim versus the World, art style started to infuse a lot of stuff, and also kind of like the sense of. It's really hard to nail that sense of humor and make it work. Like I found Scott Pilgrim versus the World funny and entertaining, but maybe if you like try too hard to imitate that, I don't think it works.
Yeah, it falls flat.
Necessarily works. Yeah.
Actually, that was something that came up in Thinking Critical's video. That was one of the comics that came up, and he didn't focus so much on the art style so much as in the characterization. His comment was basically that after Scott Pilgrim, suddenly all of the male characters were written as like, goofy beta males instead of alpha males that could take charge. And now there seems to be a standard among many of today's writers that if you write a male character, he has to be this beta male that gets dumped upon by all the female characters in his life. To which somebody in the comments added that, but in the actual Scott Pilgrim comics, like he grows as a character and doesn't always stay that beta male. So they missed the whole concept of character development, I think the main issue with a lot of these good comics that ruin comics is that other writers, they see these successes and they try to emulate them while at the same time learning the wrong lessons. So
one question would be, is that a problem with the comic, or is that a problem with the people who read it? Like, is Harry Potter lame because of J.K. Rowling's weaknesses as a writer, or has Harry Potter become lame because millions and millions of people read it? They don't read anything else, and then so they don't learn like how to improve upon Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. Oh God, who was it? Was it Miyazaki that said something like that? I mean, you would probably know better than I would, Marmaduke. But I believe it was Miyazaki, but he had an interview where he basically said that in his studio, he didn't want to get any weeaboos or otakus.
Right.
And the reason being that weeaboos and otakus who came in, they were very, very enthusiastic about the work, but they didn't have life experience or the rounding and the grounding that a non-otaku would have. So,
and I feel like otaku has a really bad connotation in Japan. Like we say, "Oh, I'm an otaku." I like it. Like that'd be like saying that'd be like the equivalent of saying like basement dweller.
Yeah, neckbeard kind of thing. It became like a term of endearment and empowerment in the American anime scene, during the 90s or something. But as far as I know, it's never really lost that negative connotation in Japan. And I think a big part of it has to do with that, just the shut in, the sort of neckbeard, little weirdos, don't have a life outside of anime kind of vibe that people get from them.
And I also kind of look at Miyazaki as very much like the toughest dad of all time. Like I think he roasted his own son when his son had his first movie come out.
Nice.
Yeah, did he? Who was the one that did Grave of the Fireflies? Was that Miyazaki?
Okay, that was at the same time as Totoro, but I don't think he did that one directly.
No, that wasn't.
I'm
Let
looking
me
it up
see.
right now.
That was by Isao Takahata.
Takahata, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that one. You know, they ripped into young children watching it. You know, because they were all lazy and shiftless, and they didn't understand that the movie's about, you know, how young people should have clung to Imperial Japan and should have listened to their parents and should have been, you know, good soldiers and everything. So it's, you know, there's this undercurrent of you know, just kind of dumping on these otakus and anime fans um, for not being grown up enough, I guess.
I mean, basically everyone of Miyazaki's generation was like irreparably changed by Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like it's all over Tetsuka's work. Like he's either referencing it directly or he's having like his alien fantasy characters, you know, experience massive death and destruction. Everybody talks about how Godzilla is kind of maybe a way of like Japanese filmmakers working through Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, definitely Godzilla, Akira too, with the big nuclear bomb going off. Certainly, yes.
Rome had that. Rome went through this period of like despair when the Gauls would keep, you know, start dropping by, kicking everyone's doors down and stealing all their stuff. There would be like this, you know, culture. Well, we're the Roman Empire. How could this happen to us?
Gallic lives matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be a contrarian here, but that just got me thinking. I mean, if the Japanese, you know, anime and manga industry went through this sort of period where, you know, the old guard started getting really angry at the whippersnappers for you know, not being mature enough or being sort of, you know, beta male cucks, could it be that that's simply what we're doing? I mean, are we simply, you know, the sort of old fuddy-duddy dads, you know, screaming at the kids for not getting it? Or
I feel like that tendency always exists. I mean, that's one of the reasons I read so much, you know, kid stuff, is I'm trying to see what the new culture is that's emerging.
Yeah.
I do think there's a value to teaching toughness. So, you know, to what degree is maybe that's just something you have to look out for in yourself. Am I complaining about kids these days because it's fun to complain about kids these days, or am I actually like observing what could be like a real problem? Like if you grow up without a world war, basically, and my generation grew up without a World War II. Like you don't have this big definitional experience that kind of like teaches that, like if you were at Omaha Beach, you basically had a reminder for the rest of your life that life is tough. And it's easier to not think that life is tough if you grow up in the world after Omaha Beach, right?
yeah.
But then maybe on the other hand, that kind of thing could jade you. Like a lot of people think that baby boomers were rebellious in their teenage years because their parents were kind of like this big heroic, you know, soldier generation with like really military expectations, with like a lot of frugality from the Depression years. Like my grandma would be like a really fastidious about like incredibly tiny purchases because she still had that Depression mindset.
Right. Well, your boy Zach has this formulation that that good times create weak men, then weak men create bad times, then bad times create strong men, and then strong men create good times, and it's like a cycle.
Yeah, I've heard that in many different contexts. From many different people. I know Zach said that. He actually said some stuff about Scott Pilgrim that I was listening to the other day. Oddly enough, you know, I've never read Scott Pilgrim, but he brought it up in reference to Brian North's Squirrel Girl, which I also still haven't read. But yeah.
After watching Zach's videos, I don't really feel like I have the need to. So, I mean, honestly,
well, the thing is with me, I actually really do enjoy Ryan North, which was why I was watching his videos on Squirrel Girl. But I don't really have any motivation to go out and read Squirrel Girl at the same time. So I'm just like, you know what? I'll split the difference and I'll watch Zach's videos on Squirrel Girl.
You recommended to me his dinosaur comics.
Yes.
And I feel like dinosaur comics, it's just weird enough. It's weird enough that it works. And maybe like in Squirrel Girl, it's the wrong combination. It's a combination of really weird postmodern humor with what's supposed to be like a little girl's superhero character. Okay. And it's like I don't want a 6-year-old girl reading about like a postmodern robot who wants to die or whatever it is. Like I don't think that works for 6-year-olds.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've got my thesis now. Thank you, Marmaduke. I think I've found my position.
So it's the wrong audience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially the wrong audience. Because that's what I was thinking when I was going through all of these Zach reviews, and it could be the same with these sort of with the edgy, gritty '90s comics, as well as with these sort of what even Zach described as the post Scott Pilgrim comics world, right?
Yeah.
Because like you take Ryan North, for example, he's not a superhero comic guy by any means. He's almost like the opposite of a superhero. He's like the anti superhero comic book writer, if that makes any sense. So he's and I sort of appreciated that, with dinosaur comics. Like I thought it was fun. It's like, haha. But when you give him a superhero comic, you're giving a guy that has no interest in superhero comics, this superhero comic, and then contextualizing it as a superhero comic. Of course, people are going to be like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, like this isn't what I'm looking for. But again, it's not really a superhero comic, is it? In the same way, like all these Scott Pilgrim comics, like they're kind of crap. But is it because you're just looking for something that it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe the people who enjoy the Scott Pilgrim comics, they probably wouldn't like a really good superhero comic just because they're looking for this sort of crappier beta male kind of comic book, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Scott Pilgrim style post Scott Pilgrim comics are bad. It just means they're bad superhero comics, right? But they could be really, really good sort of beta soy comics.
Yeah,
I guess. It just, I think people are looking at it, they're trying to fit their own preferences and then push their preferences onto the entire industry. And I don't think comics get, sorry, I was going to say, I don't want that to sound too accusatory, because I don't think like the Comicsgate people are really doing that. I think a lot of it's a reaction against that being foisted on them.
Yes.
But there's sort of this two-way street kind of push and pull. Like everybody's just kind of missing the point of what everybody else is saying, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I think like what I tend to pick up from the whole comics conversation is the fact that it's not that there are some comics out there that are in this style that we dislike, that are trying to be superhero comics but really aren't. I think the issue is that all of them are turning out that way. Like that it's very hard to find superhero things that are billed as superhero comics that actually read as superhero comics.
Yeah, and then you get called a Neanderthal for wanting the superhero comic back.
Right.
So, yeah. It's tough. Well,
I put forward, so maybe kind of like as a spin-off of what you're saying, Punchy Sanchi, was like, are people just talking past each other? I might put forward that it might not be I don't know if it's a politics and art problem so much as it's people not thinking about the arts anymore problem. So Andrew Clavin has this thesis that every art form, when it starts out, the art form is popular amongst intellectuals and it's massively popular amongst, like the illiterate people. And then as the art form begins to die, it separates out. And you can really see this pattern in like painting. What the Michelangelos of the world were scientists. They thought deeply about their art. They explored the history of their art, and their art gained this massive popularity. And then when you get into kind of like modernism, it becomes more and more cerebral. Intellectuals really like modern art. They like discussing the philosophy of the modern art, and it just keeps losing more and more of the mass people. So maybe in comics, what it is an intelligent guy like Ryan North comes in. He has kind of an agenda, but he can't speak to a normal person while still, I don't know, making the kind of cerebral comic he wants to make. And I think that maybe like the debates about Star Wars illustrate this too, where you would think that it wouldn't be a political debate to debate about whether Rey is a Mary Sue character or is Korra a Mary Sue character. You would think that would just be like a writing debate, but it became this weird culture war touchstone. And I think that has something to do with people are trying to use the internet to have a conversation about how do you write a compelling story. But a lot of people talk past. There might be a drama element to it too, right? Like someone could mine YouTube outrage bucks out of SGW Star Wars or SGW Legend of Korra, right? And so I think that has a tendency of, I don't know, like muddying the conversation. If I want to make a video making fun of Legend of Korra, like one video should do it. But if I start making thousands and thousands of bucks making fun of Legend of Korra, then I'm going to want to milk that for everything it's worth.
Yeah, become your Joker. You just keep fighting Legend of Korra over and over and over again until you drive it into the ground, and then people want a dark, gritty Marmaduke reboot where Marmaduke just blows up people and kills them instead of debating them or something.
You either die an art critic or you live long enough to see yourself become a hack.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. A couple of things I was thinking though. As far as this sort of change from popular art to sort of more cerebral art. Like with comics, I can see that less and less people are reading comics. But are modern comics really appreciated by the elites, though? Like, is it have modern comics become artsy? Like, if you look at like painting and visual arts and things like that, sort of process of going from things that the masses like to consume, and then it just kind of turns into this ivory tower thing. Like, you can definitely see that going through most artistic mediums, but with comic books it seems like just nobody wants to read the new stuff.
I've seen a weird undercurrent of cerebral comics, like Dan Clowes fits into this, where they're doing something really experimental and really hard to interpret. It'd be like a postmodern meme, but in the comic book format. That tends to get some of the professors excited, but they almost never. Okay. They only talk about mainstream comics if mainstream comics are useful for illustrating one of their cerebral points, basically.
Jonathan Hickman comics kind of run that way.
Sorry?
What?
Jonathan Hickman.
I'm not.
Oh, the X-Men guy, right?
Huh?
Isn't he doing like X-Men or something now?
Yeah, he's doing the Dawn of X storyline, which is very, very polarizing, as I've noticed. But I'm not really reading the Dawn of X right now. What I've been reading is his run on Avengers and New Avengers. And I really get the sense from him that he wants to deal with big cerebral ideas that run over many, 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 many issues and these long, complicated sci-fi storylines that after 40 issues finally culminate in the big idea that he was going for. Actually, I kind of like Hickman Vengers, but I can see why other readers might not be into that,
Maybe one thing to consider is, I guess, depending on what your tastes are, like how much do you want to invest in new stories featuring characters you like from a certain era? Like you're discussing a lot of 60s era Iron Man.
Yeah.
And maybe so I'm not the biggest Iron Man fan. So how much would I need to read of modern Iron Man before I figure out, this isn't doing it for me. Let's go back and read some 60s Iron Man, right? Like, do we need to spend a lot of time reading modern comics before just to figure out if they're bad or not? I don't know. Maybe we need like a more specialized comics YouTube community, right? Like we'll point at one guy and say, "You're the manga guy. Go read it." Like me, I'm reading all the bad shoujo manga, so you guys don't have to. And then I'll tell you which are the 2 good shoujo manga.
Like with movie reviews, but you have your Siskel and Ebert that everybody just kind of goes to and defers to, and you specialize in that genre or something.
Well, I'm trying to specialize in Iron Man, so
yeah, I trust you on Iron Man. I believe that you are the single greatest expert on Iron Man I have ever encountered, and I'm not just saying that either. You are a repository of information on Iron Man. So I elect you as the official expert of the entire internet on Iron Man.
And what's hilarious is that as you know, Punch, because you saw the video where I did the comic movie comparison, that I used to be like an utter normie. And it was the interest in the comics developed very, very rapidly. So, and now it's now I'm the repository of Iron Man information. So,
yeah, and that's even better too, because that means that we can trust your opinion. Because if Iron Man, if OG Iron Man is really so good that it can get a normie, to be like, no offense, but this obsessed with Iron Man, right? Then clearly Iron Man must be really good. So it's perfect, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that I'll cop to the fact that there are some things about my own experience, my own personal experience, that allows me to link in harder to OG Iron Man. That maybe
is it the cough? Sorry, is it the cough? Because Iron Man has his heart, and you have the cough. Is it anything with that?
The awkward cough, and also I have rheumatoid arthritis as well.
Oh okay.
Yeah, so it is very much that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so so as I've explained to many people in my travels, whenever the subject comes up, because OG Iron Man had to plug into an outlet on a regular basis, or else his heart would conk out. What that meant was he had a countdown clock in every battle that he fought. And to me, that feels like a very, very subtle, but also very, very good way to present chronic illness to a general reading audience. Like, he has these points when he's in a battle where he just literally has to stop because he no longer has the physical energy or the strength to go on and continue. And anyone who's had a chronic illness would recognize that experience exactly, of not being able to go on and not being able to continue. So,
you might. Yeah. I'm sure you've read this somewhere, The Right Geek. I have a dim memory of Stan Lee giving some interview on Iron Man where he explained he conscientiously wanted to take like all of the most negative, unpopular traits he could think of and make a lovable character out of that, like billionaire, smug, arms manufacturer, and he's doing this in like the 60s and 70s.
So like the original anti-hero or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. It was so OG Iron Man was established as in the 60s he was billed as a millionaire because billionaires weren't necessarily a thing then, but he was a millionaire. Yes, he was a weapons designer, and he was a playboy. All the girls loved him. Yeah, so basically all the things that people in the 60s were primed to hate. And then he was like, okay, now how can I make this a heroic character? Yeah. Did they ever do, because I know with like Batman, for example, they do like little comic series where he'd be transported back to the Victorian age or something. Did they ever do like a steampunk version of Iron Man where he was like 100 or something? You know, like he had like $300 in the bank or something like that. I mean, that would be really interesting to me. Like, I'd get a kick out of that. The closest thing I can think of is back when they were doing Secret Wars, they had the Wild West interpretation.
Oh, okay.
It didn't really say in that comic that he was the 100
well, there's no point then.
But what they did keep from OG Iron Man was the alcoholism and the kind of skills as an engineer. But in the Wild West setting, he was the blacksmith.
Okay. Did he still have like a suit, like a blacksmith suit?
Yes. Yeah. About halfway through that 1872 storyline, he builds a suit in his forge out of literal iron. Yeah.
So he is the Iron Man.
So he is the Iron Man. Yeah, yeah. And FYI, that story as a whole is only just okay, but oh my god, I am in love with 1872 Iron Man. Like,
just in general.
He is just generally adorable, and I can't really put my finger on why. So, but he's like the town blacksmith, but he's also the town drunk. So we have like these really Steve Rogers, Captain America, he's the sheriff of the town, and you have this really funny scene in the first issue where Steve Rogers is in his office and he hears outside of his window Tony drunkenly singing "Oh Danny Boy," and Steve's reaction is like, "Not tonight, Stark." And it's really, really funny. And he's just so, because he's the town drunk at the same time, he's like
oh my god. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be laughing.
But it's also, go ahead, you talk.
Yeah, no, because as you're describing this, I'm trying to find images of the 1872 Iron Man, and there is I guess it's a safe for work /fiction drawing of I'm assuming it's Captain America 1872 carrying a drunk singing Tony Stark, and he's singing Danny Boy. So apparently that resonated with a lot of fans. That
I legit understand why that exists, because there is that strong element in 1872. And then when he actually becomes the literal Iron Man, he's just kind of, because of the position he's in this society, he's just kind of awkward about it. So he gets into this fight in this big suit of iron, and he tries to punch one of the bad guys and ends up punching his horse, I think, if I recall correctly. And then he's like, damn, did I punch the horse? I knew I made the eyes too small. It's just so funny and adorable.
That's great.
One of the most adorable versions of Iron Man that exists, in my opinion.
His suit almost has a Punisher vibe to it.
It's
kind of interesting. You always wonder, like, what the history of the designs is, and
Yeah, I'm liking his suit. It's very imposing and
Yeah, and when he
it's
first
like a juggernaut kind of thing.
yeah, and when he walks in on the scene in it, like one of the other characters is like, "What the hell are you wearing, Stark?" And he says, "My coffin," and this very dramatic, not at all chill, like.
Oh. Are you spying on me right now, right, Geek? Because I am literally looking at that panel.
It's on
right
the same
now.
panel.
Yeah.
The right geek is the FBI.
Exact same panel. There's like a gentleman in a little cowboy hat, staring at his chest, going, "What the hell are you wearing?"
Yeah. Yeah, so I think those images are floating around out there because they have made an impression on a lot of fans besides just me. No, I'm not spying on you. I just happen to know what are.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, what are you wearing? My coffin. He has zero chill whatsoever. It's really funny.
Yeah, that looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that suit does have kind of a Punisher vibe. You're right. But anyway, to circle back to the original discussion, the other thing that the Thinking Critical video mentioned was Watchmen, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and, you know, he was talking about Watchmen, of course, was the breakout comic that dealt with the idea of deconstructing the idea of superhero. And then, but then, unfortunately, a lot of lesser writers tried to replicate that, and that ended up destroying the original superhero idea. And when he was talking about that, I would say I would have to agree with that. I don't think there's a lot of writers out there that can actually accomplish the Watchmen concept the way that Alan Moore did. I think you have to be kind of a special sort of writer to pull that off. Because the thing about Watchmen is a lot of those characters were not admirable at all. And the way that it ended was completely horrible if you have any traditional morality whatsoever. But just the way that it was written was so complex, and the characters were actually fairly well thought out, that you can respect it, even if you don't really like how it ended. But I think a lot of the imitations that have come out in the meantime have not been able to accomplish that level of, well, I don't like this, but at least I respect it. At least I can see the level of craft and talent that went into it.
And maybe one of the interesting things about it, I feel like a writer who is a good writer has to write something moral no matter what.
Yeah.
The ending of Watchmen is a right-wing newspaper is going to get Watchmen's Rorschach's journal with all the details telling the truth, right? So what you guess is going to happen is they're going to publish all the sensational details that are true in their little right-wing paper, and they'll break up the America, USSR. That's one of the things too, is that he was so worried about nuclear holocaust and communism. It's kind of dated the message of Watchmen a little bit when we look back at it with hindsight. I think because Alan Moore is kind of like one of these crazy pagan, like libertarian communists types or whatever. I don't think he was a fan of the USSR. So if I can read it as an anti-USSR story, I can forgive a lot of weird octopus worship stuff.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about Watchmen that I think is hilarious is that, all the insistence out there that, Rorschach's not a hero. Why does everyone keep saying that? And I was like, well, let me tell you why. Because you wrote the character so well.
Right.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying, that if you are a good writer, you can't help but write something moral, even if you didn't intend to.
I still want someone to explain to me how the alien was foreshadowed, because I swear I read that over and over again, and there was not enough foreshadowing for dropping a giant alien on on New York, a giant fake alien on New York. People swear that it was all planned in advance and that all the clues were there, and I've never seen where all these clues are in Watchmen.
Yeah, I don't think that I've seen the clues either. But I think maybe that's because the couple of times that I've read through it, and I've read through it more than once, I've been focusing more on like character and what are the different layers of the story going on.
Yeah.
Like the kind of comic inside of a comic. On one of my read-throughs, I was focusing on that and trying to figure out how that fits into the overall scheme of the story and so on. So, but yeah, I think that a lot of lesser writers have been trying to, recapture that magic, but they just don't have Alan Moore's ability to have that multi-layered story. And so it just comes off as, oh, well, here we go again. We're deconstructing the hero again. Yay.
I think the art equivalent is someone who draws like big anime bug eyes, and they think that's what makes anime is the big bug eyes. And
yeah.
Like as you actually pay attention, there's a lot more to it than just the bug eyes. There's a lot more to Watchmen than just deconstructing the superhero, right? And I think a variety of reading helps you start to figure out the difference between what's a superficial trait of a writer and what's maybe their substantive. What about the writer actually makes them resonate with people?
Right. Yeah, and so I think to go back to something that was mentioned earlier in the podcast about Harry Potter, I think that Harry Potter, I read Harry Potter and I didn't think it was that lame. I think that, Marm, you have the right idea, that I think it just comes across as lame now because a lot of people have read only that and they only take the most superficial things out of it. So in the same way, a lot of people have taken the superficial elements of Watchmen and have not noticed or appreciated any of the deep understructure of the story.
Yeah, the question I always ask people when they say like, "Oh, everyone I disagree with is Voldemort," I always ask them, why do you think Voldemort banned homeschooling when he came into power?
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, did he? Was that a thing in Harry Potter? He banned homeschooling
in book 6. Yeah, I think book 7. In book 7, he banned homeschooling.
Oh my God, that's jeez.
And Dolores Umbridge. Don't you understand that Dolores Umbridge is a Karen?
I mean, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because I'd always been under the impression that J.K. Rowling was pretty woke. I mean, I know that she's a TERF, but that's a very based thing to do, to make your villain ban homeschooling.
Right, it's the same thing. She's kind of a center leftist on Twitter, but when she writes like a libertarian. So like a sort of libertarian most of the time. So Umbridge is a good example where Umbridge gives the speech where she complains about progress, right? So she's clearly being coded as a conservative, but Umbridge is a government control freak interfering in a private school. So I feel like when J.K. Rowling sits down and writes at her desk, she's based. Then when she goes on Twitter, she wants celebration for her leftism.
I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you first. Then I'll.
Well, I was going to. Yeah. Okay. I was going to say because I think that's actually very common. I think most people, if they really thought about it, are actually libertarians. I know I was brought up in a very left-wing environment with a lot of very sort of left-leaning people. I just kind of assumed that being libertarian meant that you were left. And it wasn't until, many, many years of interacting with, real hardcore progressives and being drilled in the sort of progressive ideology that you're like, wait a minute, no, libertarians aren't on the left. kind of thing. And I think when you get on Twitter, there is that sort of pressure, because Twitter's not a natural environment for anybody at all. So I think, in her everyday life, she probably is a libertarian, just doesn't realize it. But then, she gets on Twitter, and you gotta go with Twitter, right? Go with the twits.
Yeah. And the impression I get as far as J.K. Rowling suddenly becoming a TERF, I don't think she's actually a TERF. I think she's a libertarian saying, I just want to be able to raise questions about this issue. Can I please do that?
Camille Paglia was like that too. She's, this real hardcore deep feminist, but she's like a libertarian feminist. So she's always going off, and it's odd because she's actually trans herself or himself. Right. Or I don't think she cares about pronouns. But she was the first person I'd ever realized that there was such a thing as like a male or a female to male transsexual, transgender, and I was like, oh, okay. But now, people just kind of see her as, the sort of crotchety conservative TERF, even though she's not by any means.
Right. I think like the label of TERF is getting definitely over applied, because being applied to anyone that raises any question about the trans agenda in any way. Even they could literally say, like J.K. Rowling literally said, I know trans people, I love them, and I want them to have the freedom to live the way they want. She literally said that, so she's not a TERF. But she
never apologize.
Yeah.
Never apologize. Yeah, that's stupid. Well, I would say, like, if it were me, I'd just try and own the label. Try and take it back, claim it for your own. Do a little Aikido thing.
Free discussion. Call me a TERF.
Yeah, make it a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Sort of do your whole TERF thing, and just
we're getting dangerously close to that with racist too.
Yeah. Oh God.
Okay.
Stefan Molyneux. Did any of you actually wind up watching Stefan Molyneux before he went?
I'd seen like two of his videos. Like I saw one of his videos, like advocating like no spanking in parents' households, and I watched a video of his talking about the value of philosophy, and I thought, okay, he's interesting, but I didn't like check him out that deeply.
That's kind of his. That was his normal thing up until Trump kind of came into power.
Yeah.
Maybe like 6 months before Trump got elected, he did this whole switch to being very political. I mean, he was always political, but he was like an anarchist, and then he turned into a very, very hardcore Trump supporter, very, very alt-right. And I remember, because my friend, the weirdo guy, the frenemy guy, he was very much into Stefan Molyneux. So I was kind of keeping tabs on Stefan Molyneux over the years. And I watched as his community went from predominantly, sort of nice libertarians and anarcho-capitalists and, weird hippies and, no spanking and even like leftists and things, to people who were actually like genuinely using racist as a mark of honor, right? Like loving the term and using it, and, ironically and sarcastically. And then, eventually you're like, oh, okay, yeah. This actually fits. Right?
Then the question is, how much of that is changing your position, and how much of that would be, I don't know, like recognizing that you have an overlap with a political party, right? So, like, I guess I had the experience where I really didn't like Trump at all, but I kind of came to realize, well, like if I write down the issues I care about on a sheet of paper and I leave out all the personal things. Yeah, his platform represents what I want a lot much better than what Hillary is representing, right? So is that an issue of Molyneux? You think that's an issue of Molyneux, like, testing the wind and saying, okay, Trump's popular, I'm going to become a Trump supporter? Or do you think that's an issue of maybe Molyneux saying, well, some of my libertarian interests would be pretty well served by them?
Yeah, well, it's complicated. I mean, we'd have to do like an entire stream on Molyneux, and I'm sure he'd get mad if he ever heard it. But
Yeah. Did
but
you archive
I
his
think
stuff?
it's
Did you archive his stuff? Because you could make some YouTube bucks archiving popular
yeah,
channels
actually,
that go down.
a number of them I did archive, but I'd have to go back and look. Hopefully, I've got his very early stuff on why you shouldn't vote, because I kept getting banned from his channel for reposting those, like in the chat comments.
Being a smart
Yeah, well, he didn't like it very much, or whoever was running his channel didn't like it very much. But as far as him and Trump goes, he would say that it's because he saw his interests aligning with Trump's. I'm not sure that was exactly true. I think it's a mixture of things. I think that may have been what he told himself to help him sleep at night. But he had quite a number of things that he never really resolved philosophically, and one of his main contentions over the years has been that you have to follow the philosophy wherever it leads, and you need to be rational, and you need to have strong arguments, and you can't be emotional, and all this stuff. And the things that he never really resolved, they tended to be actually fairly foundational things, and he just kind of let them go. I think a lot of it had to do with, I mean, one is the fact that it got him very popular very, very quickly. He was always somewhat popular, but he had this niche of, people who hung out on Mises.org and, sort of real hardcore nerds. But then all of a sudden, he's one of the central figures of the intellectual dark web, basically overnight. But also, I think a lot of it has to do with just his need for a father figure, right? I hate to say things like psychoanalyze people, because I don't want to sort of ad hominem and push him away, because obviously he could still be right about Trump, even if he's got motives that are sort of non-rational. But I do think that he had a lot of non-rational motives in regards to Trump, because he was like this with Ayn Rand, for example. He'd always treat Ayn Rand like a mother figure, because he came from a broken home and he had an abusive mother. So he sort of latched onto Ayn Rand. He really hated the welfare state, because he blames the welfare state for enabling single mothers to, do the whole single mother thing, right? Because welfare, they can get by on just their one income alone. So, the welfare state becomes the father, and the mother doesn't have to find a father, and then the kid's miserable and everything, right? And when Trump comes along, there was definitely an element of, this is like the John Galt figure who's going to come in and save us. So, he'd make that argument, or he'd try to make that argument about, Trump is the individual that we need to come in, and preserve the American Republic and bring capitalism back. But I also definitely got the sense that it was more than that for him, because other people would get mad at him, and maybe not even mad at him, but they disagree with him, right? And he would get incredibly upset. That very, very thin skin. So yeah, I think there's never one explanation for why somebody wants to do something, unless it's completely true. Like if you say 2 + 2 = 4, I'll say yeah, sure. But
you could have
so
it's complex motivation for any
complex
motivation.
Yeah. But so it's all of the above, I guess.
He has a great name. Like if you're gonna be if you're gonna go into philosophy, make sure you have a very memorable name. Don't be Bill Smith. Plato, and as Bill Smith once said on Plato, no, don't be that.
You feel like John Smith. Adam Smith. I mean that worked. Yeah, Bill Smith doesn't really work though. That's kind of doesn't work.
Okay, I've been collecting a couple thoughts in my mind through these different conversations. First of all, to go back to the people sit down at their writing chair and are based, and then when they go on social media, they're lefties. Another good example of that is J. Michael Straczynski.
Yeah. Babylon 5. Babylon 5
is based as hell.
Yeah. I mean, it's still this thing where, like, I can say, when I watched it, I said, okay, this was written by a classically liberal Democrat. This was written by the Democrat who got canceled 5 years ago and believes in all of these great classical liberal ideas. Like, you can tell he has some of his kind of universal religious ideas peeping through. Like, there's an anti-Nazi episode, but throughout, it has a fantastic, like, anti-fake news theme. And this is like 2 decades before Trump. He is ripping apart fake news and the Orwellian society and directly attacking the deconstruction of heroes.
And the fact that the central couple in the series has an incredibly traditional relationship, I think, is fairly based too.
Oh God, yeah. Have you seen one of those lately? Because I've been going back and watching like old TV shows and things, old movies from like pre-2018, and it's jarring. You know, like I'll see it, I'll be like, wait, why are that? You know, they're having some kind of a traditional wedding. They're married. What?
Yeah.
You know? Like, where are the lesbians?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, like your boy Zach says, if it's a new female character, there's a 50% chance that she's a lesbian. Women, and if she's a new black female character, then the chance goes up to like 75%. Because apparently there are no black females that are heterosexual. Like,
no, not anymore. No.
Yeah.
Maybe one closing thought on J. Michael Straczynski. I feel like he's a good example to look at for you to say, how do I write a character who doesn't exactly hold my worldview honestly? Because he'll have something where he'll have like a Catholic priest on.
Yeah.
And, you know, J. Michael Straczynski will still kind of put some of his thoughts into it, but the Catholic priest thinks and talks like a Catholic priest. The Baptist thinks and talks like a Baptist. Commander Sinclair thinks and talks like a no-holds-barred military jarhead kid, right? Which it takes a little something out of you, because you have to basically be humble enough to admit, maybe I'm not always right, and then put yourself into the boots of this person who might disagree with you and try to find what's noble about that character in the context of their world. I'd encourage that as a writing exercise. Try to, on purpose, tell a hero story. You know, you don't have to make it like a pedophile or something, but give them some sort of trait. Give them some sort of trait that you disagree with, and still try to find the heroism there.
Yeah. Well, and you can argue that he also did that with the jingoistic Centauri too.
Definitely. The Centauri are fleshed out, and the Mimbar have they're very much a samurai culture. That's the most clear inspiration. Yeah, but they have a very nationalistic. They nearly genocided all of human life.
Yeah. So we have like two major races in the series that nearly genocided another race in the series. Like,
well, I mean, the humans probably deserved it anyway. So.
Well, you know, the humans killed their leader, so.
Right.
But yeah, so like I always, Londo Mollari is actually one of my favorite characters in Babylon 5 for the reason that I think that J. Michael Straczynski does an insanely good job explaining how someone could get to that depths of evil right? While having some noble motives at the same time, kind of thing. It's really fascinating. Yeah.
And I think that there's a Shakespeare element to that.
Yeah.
Like the Shakespeare trope is that his characters' personalities determine their destinies, and that was something different than what came before Shakespeare. Like in a Greek tragedy, bad things happen to innocent, Greek heroes, right?
Right.
But in Shakespeare tragedies, Macbeth shoots himself in the foot because of his own character traits. So if you took like one of Shakespeare's characters and put him into a different plot, it wouldn't work, because their decisions are what make the plot impacted it. At the same time, he's also making this point that there could be things outside of yourself that affect. He's the most balanced writer of all time. Like no one's come up with a character that Shakespeare didn't come up with.
Yeah.
Samson's did it. Well,
Samson's did
it. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, Shakespeare definitely had all those influences. But one thing I was going to say though, I mean, was it really true that bad things just kind of happen to Greek tragic figures? I mean, wasn't it more like fate or the gods or whatever?
Right. There's I'm thinking of the boy who got banished because his dad heard an omen that his son would kill him. So he spends all this time.
But he did though. He did kill him in the end.
He comes back. He befriends his dad, and then he throws a discus and he kills his dad by accident.
That's something he did though. That's something he got in trouble for this flaw. I mean, it might have been his fate that damned him or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking.
the distinction is if Hamlet were in a Greek tragedy, Hamlet would hear the prophecy that he was going to kill his father, and then Hamlet would agonize about it philosophically for
they'd mope around for the next 5 hours.
To throw the discus or to not throw the discus.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the Shakespearean thing is exactly right. When you talk about some of the characters in Babylon 5, back in the early 2000s, when I was deep in Babylon 5 fandom and was actually writing Babylon 5 fan fiction, yeah, I had one of my avatars on LiveJournal. It was a Londo themed one, and it had a line from Macbeth on it. I am in blood, stepped in so far that should I wait no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er, because I thought that fit the character perfectly. There's Londo's funny because he kind of goes from Falstaff to Macbeth as his arc proceeds.
Yeah, I get that vibe.
Yeah.
So semi-obscure 1990s science fiction with N64 cutscenes and surprisingly good, absolutely excellent characterization. You should all check it out. You missed a golden one in the 90s.
Yeah, if you weren't alive in the 90s for Babylon 5, do watch Babylon 5. Yeah.
What would be a good place to start? Just start at the beginning then, or
I'd start with season 1. Would you recommend the movies, right, Geek? Because I've watched some of the movies and they do explain a few of the extra things.
Are they prequel movies or sequel movies?
A couple of them are.
Okay.
But actually no, I would not recommend the movies first. I would recommend season 1, episode 1 as the place where you start. Because if you start with the prequel movies, like the one about the Minbari War, that kind of spoils you for things that happen in the main series.
Yeah, I really like how they weaved background elements into the dialogue naturally. You knew a lot about the Minbari War just from people having these very natural conversations about it, and you pick things up as you go. You never felt like, oh, I missed something, I got to go back. You just felt like you were entering into the world through these characters talking about their world.
Yeah, and I will say that there will be some Babylon 5 fans out there that will tell you, Punch, to start with season 2. You should not listen to them.
All right.
I like Sheridan more than Sinclair, so I kind of get why some people would say that. But I feel like you'd miss so much characterization if you just skipped over season 1.
I'm fine starting with crap and soldiering through it if it's important to the plot. I mean, I did that with My Little Pony. So
nice, you made it.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it took a while actually, because I remember people had been telling me to watch it, and and most of the people I'd heard telling me to watch it were kind of I mean, I don't want to use profanity, but you get the you get the gist of where I'm going with this. And I tried to watch the first episode, I think like 17 times. And each time I only managed to make it about a minute in, and then I'd be like, oh, God, I can't do it. And then I'd watch a little bit more, and oh, God, I can't do it.
Yeah.
It was sort of like that for the first couple episodes. Yeah. But, you know, after I got through it, you know, that it picked up. So
for My Little Pony, I always thought that like the season openers and the season closers were always the best.
Yeah. Usually, I mean, the first season wasn't very good. But
I wish they had, like, as they started to like get more experimental in later seasons, I almost kind of wish they would have said, okay, what if we did more stuff like the season openers and season closers, right? Because I do like the slice of life vibe of most of it. I just feel like there was a lot of potential in there for an action show that would show up
a lot more lore building. Yeah.
Well, what I've heard, I don't really follow it too much, but I mean, Mrs. Punchy is, you know, complete Pegasus. She doesn't self-identify as, but she spends like all day, you know, watching Pony Grimdarks and drawing My Little Pony characters, and she knows all the fandom My Little Pony fandom actors and actresses and things, and you know, whatever. But she has informed me that the next version, not the Teen Titans Go ponies that's out right now, but the one that's going to follow Teen Ponies Go, is going to be sort of like that. It's going to be more adventure. Yeah, like lore and action and adventure and ponies going off and being more mature, I guess. I'm not sure if it's going to work. I'm very skeptical, especially after the last several seasons of of the last one. But you know, it may be the sort of thing that you're looking for. So I'd say at least maybe check it out if you get the chance.
Yeah, I forget which season it was. It was like season 3, 4, or something like that, where at the end it ended up being everything was tied together because everyone had their little item that they got by displaying their character traits, and they became the keys to unlock the thing.
Oh yeah, the elements of harmony.
Yeah,
I mean, not that I would know, because that would be embarrassing. But
hot take. Nothing can beat the 80s My Little Pony movie.
Oh, God,
nothing can stop the schmooze.
Probably when I was a kid, I watched that, but I don't really remember it that well.
Did you? I mean, I never. I remember watching some My Little Pony back in preschool, and it's a very vivid memory too, because I remember feeling incredibly guilty about it afterwards. I was like, oh, that was a girls' show, right? Like, why did I spend the evening watching that? And to be honest, like, I don't really regret feeling bad about it because I didn't like the show at all. But yeah, you know, that was sort of an early experience with issues of gender, I guess.
I had sisters, so I had the excuse that I was babysitting. Right? I didn't like SpongeBob. My sisters made me watch a lot of SpongeBob.
I didn't like SpongeBob either.
By the time SpongeBob rolled around, I was already too old.
Yeah, I was a little bit too old for SpongeBob. SpongeBob was getting popular, and Pokemon too. Like Pokemon, I mean, I could have been doing Pokemon a lot with my friends, but I was sort of right on that cusp where I could take it or leave it depending on how nerdy I wanted to be.
So I was young enough that I just like I remember getting excited for Pokemon before Pokemon was released in the United States, and like circling circling Pokemon T-shirts in like those Sears catalogs with goofy graphics on them.
Oh, actually, you might remember this then, because there's been something that I've been trying to figure out for ages. Because I distinctly remember reading somewhere. Well, maybe not distinctly, but I think I distinctly remember. I vaguely remember distinctly remembering some sort of news kerfuffle about the seizure warnings from Pikachu, but that occurring before the Pokemon craze really hitting. Like some kind of news about like Pokemon was going to be like the biggest thing ever, and it was going to give children seizures and blah 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 blah.
So
and then yeah,
I might not have been. I wasn't paying attention to the news, but I might have heard like my parents say, "Oh, we heard that a kid got sick watching Pokemon or something."
Okay,
and
yeah,
I don't
that's
remember
probably what it is.
I don't remember if they aired it in the United States. They might have aired it in Japan and had the problem. So it was either they aired it in the United States and then pulled it, or they never aired it in the United States because they figured out the problem before. I've seen the Japanese episode that prompted that in the scenes, and after that they kind of like overcorrected, and every time they were flashing lights they lowered the frame rate on all of those scenes.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, because
they also had 9/11 fixes too, like anything with a building smashing. They would remove anything that involved a building getting smashed, and guns and boobs, of course, all got censored.
So like Moltres flying into a tower or something.
It was in the theme song. In the theme song, a Pokemon knocks over a building, so the theme song actually changed.
Oh God. Okay, yeah, I don't remember that, but yeah, I do remember that that whole thing, like right before the Pokemon craze hit, because I remember when kids started getting really into Pokemon, I was like, oh yeah, that's going to give you seizures, and then not watching it. I think the Simpsons did a bit on that too around the same time, but I was too busy watching the Simpsons to bother with Pokemon. Which is probably a bad choice in retrospect.
It's mostly worth watching for Jesse and James. Jesse and James are the lasting cultural gift of that show to the world.
Don't even get me started on Jesse.
That was the 90s, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out where I was. At that time, I had already moved on to watching St. Elsewhere reruns on PBS. So.
Oh, God. Yeah. We were still young, I guess. young and naive.
Yeah, you guys are kids that need to get off my lawn
although it's terrible though, because I decided not to really get into Pokemon. Like I sort of half knew about it, and at the time I was like, oh, you know what, that's fine. All these other kids, it's sort of into Pokemon, blah 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 blah. But have you seen Pokemon now?
I've seen some. Yeah,
it's still everywhere. It is like literally fucking everywhere. Like, sorry, they
came up with the perfect franchise for a little kid, right?
It's amazing how successful that thing has been. Like, and how enduring.
When the Pokemon Go game came out, all of the kids at work were playing it, and
insufferable millennials who never grow up.
It's millennials, it's Zoomers, it's old ladies. Because I was going to say, when that Pokemon Go thing came out, Mrs. Punchy started getting really into it, and we would go out to, there was a stretch of the beach near my house where they had like 7 or 8 Pokestops all in a row. So we'd sort of go out there to the Pokestop beachfront area, and every single night it would just be wall to wall packed with people looking for trading Pokemons and being like, oh, there's a Squirtle over there. I saw a Pikachu. And it wasn't just, kind of 20 somethings and 30 somethings and like hipster millennials or anything. It was like little kids. It was hipster millennials. It was Zoomers. It was high school kids. It was little old ladies. Whole like bus groups of like these 70-year-olds going up and down the beach. It was amazing. Like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people just sort of packed into this tiny area at like 10, 11 o'clock at night on a fall day.
I legit told our business manager, you should put a Pokestop in our lobby, then people will come in. Like
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, they missed the opportunity, but
yeah.
When that was huge, I mean, it was amazing. And the trouble is, like now, because I'll sort of be going around and I'll meet these sort of art students and things, and all people looking for artwork, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this Pokemon and this Pokemon, and I've missed a lot of valuable life skills by not following Pokemon.
I guess like, I have too.
Yeah, like if
you must have picked up some of it through like your Christian knowledge, right? I mean,
oh yeah, like I know a lot through Christian, and just from sort of games and cultural osmosis, and
my kids,
following Jesse and everything. But my knowledge of Pokemon is very, very basic. And I keep thinking to myself, like, if I could go back to, whatever grade it was like elementary school or whatever, when Pokemon started getting very big, and instead of, I don't know, reading that book, instead spend that time on the Game Boy playing the Pokemon, how much more I would have learned that would have been useful in my later life. Don't do algebra or something, just study Pokemon. And then but, I don't know. I mean, I guess at the time you don't really know what is going to be the useful life skill, and you just kind of roll the dice. It is a useful, especially if you are into art and you like being an artist, because Pokemon it's not showing any signs of slowing down at all, at least from what I've seen. So
yeah. Instead of watching St. Elso reruns on PBS, I should have been learning Pokemon. Like,
oh no, I would have stuck with the St. Elsewhere person, because then you get to know the crushing misery of having the worst ending ever in a TV show, and you know what to avoid in the future.
Yeah,
right. Like that's an important
ending that destroyed all of TV for the rest of the time. Yeah. Yeah,
you've got the arcane esoteric knowledge that everyone else needs.
Yeah. Do you know that story, Marm?
No, I don't.
Oh okay. God, do you actually want to tell him, or would you rather he goes and watches all of St. Elsewhere and then gets to the?
Well, I would love for lots of people to watch St. Elsewhere, because it is available on Hulu and I think also IMDb TV if you don't mind ads. But it's also kind of a funny story too, so I kind of do want to tell it.
I mean, it's your show. It's your birthday party. You can do what you want. But...
Marm, do you know what St. Elsewhere is, first of all?
No, I have no clue. I've never heard of it.
I have to lay the groundwork first.
It's a type of Pokemon, Marmaduke. How do you not know this?
Actually, it was a hospital drama, kind of like ER. You guys are 90s kids, so you might remember ER, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like that.
Yeah, that was like the old person's show.
Yeah.
My parents would watch it, and I'd get grossed out because I'd see blood, and I'd run out of the room. Yeah, that's my memory of ER. Yeah.
Oh, well, if you get grossed out by blood, then maybe don't watch it.
I'm more used to it now.
Okay. All right. So St. Elsewhere was like the 80s version of ER. It was this ginormous ensemble hospital drama. It originally ran from 83 to I think 88 or 89, something like that. And I watched it in the 90s because in 83 I was still too young to be watching something like that. And basically, it was this huge hospital drama that kind of established a more gritty feel for a hospital drama. Like the doctors were not all like paragons of virtue. Actually, one of the doctors turned out to be a rapist in like season 2, and then there was another major character who was actually kind of like a closed-minded bigot, but he was also very fascinating in other ways. And that's like when I did my intro to St. Elsewhere video on the channel, I went into that quite a bit on that particular character, because that character is actually one of my favorites because of, remember the time when people could get into the head of someone that they disagreed with and still like treat them with justice and treat them like they're human beings, even if they had beliefs that you as a writer thought were repulsive?
No, that sounds problematic. That's problematic.
St. Elsewhere was written at a time when that was a routine thing that people did. So we had this huge ensemble hospital drama with lots of many multi-episode storylines and stuff like that. And you get to the end of the 6th season, and in the final episode, the writers decided that this whole hospital and all the characters in it were really the daydreams of one of the characters' autistic son. That was the end of the show.
Oh, good grief.
And since St. Elsewhere crossed over with a lot of other shows that were on in the 80s at the time, there was one episode where the 3 leading characters, the 3 attending doctors, they went to Cheers because Cheers was on at the same time. So if St. Elsewhere is fake, so is Cheers. And if you keep following 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon style, all the connections that all of these TV shows have, you end up obliterating like giant chunks of the whole TV universe. They're all a part of this autistic daydream. Like,
but hey, that's just a theory. Sitcom game theory.
Do you happen to remember the website that tracked all of the shows that were affected by the St. Elsewhere apocalypse?
It's called Tommy Westfall's Mind, I think.
Is it Tommy West?
Tommy Westfall's Mind. Westphal, I think. Westfall. Yeah, but like the way the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon worked, like even Star Trek was getting wrapped up into it. So Star Trek was a part of the autistic daydream. It was like so St. Elsewhere like single-handedly destroyed all of television, like in one episode.
Okay. Oh, it says here it says that the MCU is part of Tommy Westfall's mind. I don't know if that's true.
Right, yes.
I think that might be. Oh God, yeah. I'm trying to find the full list. I remember I found a website after you'd done that video where it listed like everything that was definitely part of his mind and everything that was maybe part of his mind and all these things. Honestly, it's all
yeah. The link was kind of tenuous, but you could make an argument for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
don't know. I can't find it right now.
I gotta look at the argument for the MCU because I'll laugh.
Yeah, well, it's on Polygon, so I wouldn't recommend reading it. I mean, if you want, I could
archive it. So you don't give them revenue.
Yeah.
And let me see. I'll do a private window with Tor. How about that? 30 years. Oh God, advertisements. It's such a horrible website.
All
Yeah,
the-
I'll just read through that. You guys.
Okay.
Okay. They say through Arrested Development.
Okay.
It says state elsewhere characters appeared on Homicide Life in the Street.
Correct.
Detective Munch from Homicide Life on the Street appeared in Arrested Development,
Right.
and Tobias Funk appeared as an Easter egg in the collector's collection in Avengers: Infinity War.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of that's true or if it's important.
Okay. So that's one of the more tenuous connections. Like,
yeah,
it's not like Cheers. Cheers is directly.
But it's not enough for it just to be the same actor. They have to be appearing as the character, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the implication of what the author's saying, but I'm not sure. I don't know Arrested Development or what you're talking about this Easter egg or anything. So, Polygon, I don't trust it anyway. So it's probably fake news. But there you go.
There you go.
It's possible that the
Stunning and Brave
never actually happened. Like there may be a chance that the MCU is fictional.
Gosh, really?
Well, I mean, it's fictional.
It was just a little 10-year-old Jack Kirby thinking it all up.
I mean, technically, but I mean, it's fictional in a more upsetting way, I guess. Because at least you have the ability to pretend that it's all real, in the logic of the show. But then when it pulls it all out from under you, it just sort of defeats everything, right?
Yeah, and that that ending to St. Elsewhere made me very, very mad because I got super invested in a lot of the characters, and it's like, haha, just kidding, none of those characters are real. Like, why would you do that, you asshole? Like,
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, that's something that I always get paranoid about whenever something new that I used to like gets a reboot or gets new stuff coming out. I'm just like, oh God, are they going to do like, oh, it was all a dream, or they're just going to ruin it? I mean, they ruined Lobo already. They've been doing the damn best to ruin Mortal Kombat. So far as I know, nothing I really like has been retconned as all just a dream. Usually it gets retconned as, well, we had a time reset or something. We go to a new universe or something. But I mean, that might have worked. If at the end of St. Elsewhere, like, I don't know, what one of the doctors started a nuclear explosion that sucked them all into a parallel universe or something.
Like the pocket universe of Heroes Reborn.
Yeah, and then that was inside the snow globe. Like, they were all sucked into a snow globe, and the world reset itself, but it was going to be this completely different world where the doctors were kind of blue collar people with kids that were autistic or whatever. But the way they did it, I mean, I didn't even watch St. Elsewhere, and even I was infuriated by it.
when you heard me explain it, you were like, "What? That's terrible."
Yeah, it broke my heart. I'm still upset about it.
The closest I have to that is just feeling gradually more disappointed by Lost as it was going on, and not even I didn't even stick around to the end of Lost.
Oh, the ending was so great. I loved the ending. I mean, I don't want to spoil it. Like, I didn't really like the last season or so, the last few seasons. But I was satisfied with the ending. I know a lot of people hated it, but after all the crap that had been going down just prior to it, I was like, yeah, you know what? That's probably the best way they could have salvaged it. But so if you ever have any inclination to going back and at least watching the final episode of Lost, I mean, it can't get any worse, I guess is what I'm saying.
I guess I'm using manga as a way of trying to mitigate my pain. So if something is awful, I can at least say, well, at least I got to look at some pretty pictures. You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were some very pretty pictures in the beginning of Lost, at least.
Yeah. Good cinematography.
Did you ever see the other Lost show? The what was it? The Leftovers?
No.
Left Behind Leftovers?
Gosh.
Yeah, did you see it, right, Geek?
No, I actually did not get into Lost at all. So.
Okay, well, they had another show. It ended several years ago, but it's somewhat vaguely. It's like if you combined Left Behind with Lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Christian rap show.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a huge chunk of the world just kind of disappears one day, and nobody knows what happens. And then, it picks up like a year later or several years later, like dealing with how society is working in this disappearance. There's one town in particular that didn't have anybody leaving, so it's turned into like this religious center where people would come to explore new religious movements and things, and it's got a lot of that. Like the religious aspects are more pronounced than Lost, but it's got that kind of weirdness and that sort of spiritual stuff going on. So I don't know if you enjoyed the early seasons of Lost. You check it out, I'd say. The ending is infuriating for some, as with Lost. But I was okay with it. It's got what's his name? The original new Doctor Who, so not the original Doctor Who, but when they did the newer seasons, right? I forget which number he is, or his name. The skinny guy. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know, but okay.
Because you know how they used to have Doctor Who, right? And then they kind of stopped for several years, while then they restarted it, and it's been kind of like the modern Doctor Who. He was
all right. Yeah, I've seen like the first 4 episodes of what people say is modern Doctor Who. So I have the most basic.
I saw like the first season of what is modern Doctor Who. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he was the very first of the modern Doctor Who, and he's
him. Okay. Yeah. A question. Yeah. Okay. I get it.
So he's in it, and a whole bunch of other people, but
I've heard people say that they don't have all of Doctor Who. Like a lot of the old stuff is gone forever, and they probably won't find it.
Yeah, I think, and that's the primary reason why I haven't gotten into it, because I am a completist by nature. So if you tell me that I will never complete something, then I can't start it. Like,
will you ever complete Iron Man though? I mean, there's got to be a lot that you haven't read yet. I feel like
if you focus on one character, it's not that hard. Like within a year, just read through. You can get through like one character's complete run. Like as long as it's not like Batman or something, and they have like this insane, billion alternate.
Well, Iron Man's pretty insane too. I mean, maybe not, as insane as Batman, but I'd imagine Iron Man would take.
I am still working on like some of the side stories they had, like, back in like their the kind of 2011, 2012, 2013, like just after Civil War, they had a bunch of like limited series. Just some mini series with Iron Man. I'm still like trying to go through some of those, and I'm trying to go through like his appearances elsewhere. But I am basically done with like the book called Iron Man that was like the mainstay Iron Man book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he's right. It doesn't really take that, if you focus on one character, it doesn't really take that long to get through at least his main stem book, Then you go searching for like where else did he show up, Yeah,
well, he's got all the other spin-offs and stuff, because I mean I went through that with Lobo. Actually, I remember there was one summer a friend of mine had the complete collection of like the 90s runs of Lobo, and I borrowed them all and I read through them in like a week or so. So yeah, I mean that was probably a lot shorter than Iron Man, but
yeah, because Iron Man had 332 in the original 1968 run. That one went from 1968 up to the early 90s. And then there was like a 12-issue run in the mid-90s. And then there was an 89-issue run like in the late 90s, early 2000s. And yeah, so it's quite a few. It's a lot of books. But yeah, because I am a completist, I actually did. I started with Tales of Suspense number 39, and I just went forward in chronological order, which...
But have you read all the fan fiction, though?
All the fan fiction?
Well, that's not fair. That's not fair.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
It said you can't read all the books about Shakespeare in a lifetime. Yeah, we passed the can you read all the fan fiction about X in a lifetime long ago.
Yeah. Although, comic Iron Man doesn't have as much fan fiction as MCU does. Because all the normies love the MCU. And all the normies are writing fan fiction about it. So there's crap tons of MCU fan fiction about Iron Man. There's a little bit less about comic Iron Man. And no, I have not read them all.
Okay. Yeah, well, just stick with the comic Iron Man ones. That'll be your homework.
Well,
read every bit of comic.
Like the fan fiction, as you know, can get weird.
Yeah. Like, okay. Well, just the clean ones then.
The clean ones.
Give like a age range or something, and then everything below that, you can make.
Yeah. Although I will on occasion click on a story that is tagged explicit if there's some other aspect of the storyline that I want to read. And what I do is I just scroll through all the explicit parts to get to the actual plot. Like, well, here's the sex. Let me
plot, huh?
Like,
sorry, My Little Pony.
Yeah. I actually have to do that a lot because for comic Iron Man, I'm very, very interested in his relationship with Captain America.
Oh, of course. There's a lot of. But I know it's on Tumblr.
But all the fiction writers write slash about them.
Yeah, don't look that up.
So so I will read the slash just because I'm so desperate for Iron Man Captain America activity. But then, when you get to the actual, questionable sex parts, you just scroll through those parts and get back to the actual plot where you're exploring the dynamic between the characters,
I want a series of, pieces of fan fiction that could credibly be presented as good literature. I feel like that's going to be, a niche someone could enter into.
Yeah. Because there are some, even if they're questionable in the sense that they're putting people in relationships that weren't really in those relationships in the comics, some of them are in fact quite well written.
So I read somewhere that the longest work of fiction written in English, it's a Smash Brothers fan fiction is the longest work written in English.
Really, I thought it was for the Equestria. I mean, maybe Smash Brothers has taken over the title. Do you know what the Smash Brothers fiction is called?
Okay, let's just Google it. Smash Brothers.
This might actually
longest in the world.
Some drama if it's true.
The Subspace Emissaries World Conquest is currently over 3,500,000 words,
Whoa!
making it almost 3 times as long as Marcel Proust's 7-volume À la Roche de Temps Perdu, 6 times as long as Infinite Jest, and 13 times as long as Ulysses.
Wow!
How much longer than Fallout Equestria, though?
What's it called?
Fallout Equestria. It's like Fallout, but it's My Little Pony. Oh god, yeah, okay, it's longer than Fallout Equestria then. Fallout Equestria is only 620,000.
Yeah, but chunk. Holy
Wow.
cow.
Like, I've been writing MCU Tony for the normies, and I've only gotten to like 40,000 words, so. Or not
Well,
even
that's a shame, because I mean, Fallout Equestria. I don't know if I mean, you don't seem like you followed the Brony
No.
community.
I mean, I watched the show, but I wasn't in the Brony community. No.
Yeah, it's a bit insane, because I went to BronyCon several years back to take Mrs. Punchy. Well, that's what I said. I really went to meet Chris Jan, but
Yeah.
While there, they have like an entire subculture within the Brony fandom just for Fallout Equestria. They had vendors booths. They have people writing novels about Fallout Equestria, like not even about My Little Pony or Fallout, but just set in the world of Fallout Equestria. There was this young, I'm not sure if she was a lady or a gentleman, but apparently she'd actually gone and taken a copyright case to the Supreme Court or something like that, and had just won it so that she could publish this Fallout Equestria derivative work and sell it at the convention and things.
Wow.
Yeah. It's odd. It's spawned its own cottage industry just from that fiction. But
I to some extent I admire the fans who can do that, because I can't write long. The longest thing I ever wrote was 23,000 words. Like,
oh god, well, I mean that's still pretty long. So
My problem is I just come up with like a point, and a point isn't worth a novel, so I make it into a short story.
Same. Like I'll have this. There's this particular image I want to impart on the audience. I really only need 2,000 words to do that. Like,
well, honestly, I mean, at the risk of getting deplatformed, I mean, I'd say that Fallout Equestria did not need 620,000 words.
Oh no!
Yeah, oh no.
My coworker used to be really into pony fan fiction, and he would pitch his pony fanfic ideas off of me, and he would have like really complicated wars and everything all worked out in dialogue and the comedy scenes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, he was just a very entertaining guy. Like, his problem was he wasn't that disciplined as a writer. He was more of an actor, so he wanted to act out his fan fiction more than he wanted to write it.
Yeah, that's like everybody in the Brony fandom. The only difference between that and Fallout Equestria is that Fallout Equestria, the guy actually sat down and wrote it. But it's very long, very rambling, all kinds of stuff going on. One thing that always bothered me though was that it was very big on like video game mechanics for no discernible reason. Like, I mean, you know what Fallout is, right?
Yeah,
I know what Fallout is.
Yeah, well, because they have like very, very loosely based on Fallout, but they'd have like interludes where the character would level up and would learn a new perk, but they weren't being presented as if they were in a video game. They were supposed to be like real ponies living a real life. So it was like, kind of
like how Chris will introduce video game elements into his comic, kind of out of the blue.
Exactly like that, except with Chris, it's a bit more endearing, I think. When he does it, because you're just kind of like, oh yeah, whatever, he's just that's how reality appears to him. But in Fallout Equestria, like I don't know, it's just, it feels more awkward, if that's possible to be more awkward than Solitude. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to dump on it too much. The only My Little Pony fanfic I really hated was My Little Dashie. Like Fallout Equestria I can deal with.
Oh, that's the one where like someone, like I've seen a video of that. Is that the one where like someone just leaves a box at someone's door with Rainbow Dash in it, and the guy's like completely realistic?
Yes,
that's
so
it.
Bad.
I feel like there could be a history book written about cringy My Little Pony culture.
I actually did at one point. I was writing like entire essays on why I hated, or at least why I didn't think My Little Dashie worked. I'd have to dig it up again, but it was I don't know, me and that
You know
fanfic.
what broke my heart is I've started seeing Zoomers post about how they were traumatized by Smile.move and cupcakes as a kid, and I thought, oh gosh, I witnessed that happening in real time.
Yeah. I actually, well, the very first thing I saw of My Little Pony was the Andrew WK music video for Cupcakes, and I actually thought it was pretty cool. Like, I thought I was like, oh yeah, is this what My Little Pony's like? Like, I gotta watch it if it's like this. And then oddly enough, like afterwards, after I started watching the show, I went and revisited it, and I really liked Rainbow Dash. So it's like, oh god, I can't watch this. It's all right. Right. So I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
no.
so it traumatized me after many years.
Like 4chan noticing it and kind of like posting memes about it to generate interest in it. It's a real like internet age show in a way like nothing else before it was, I think.
Yeah. I was gonna say I was talking to my mother one day about reading the normie MCU fan fiction, and I was saying to her that, oh my god, they ship everyone with everyone. If you can think of a pairing, there is a story that exists. Like it's not Rule 34, but there needs to be a new rule invented that if you can think of a pairing from a particular popular canon, somebody has shipped it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is that rule. I'd have to go back and look through, the official canon list of rules.
Of internet rules, yeah.
Yeah. Because I was actually just thinking, because just to bring it back to the stuff that we were talking about at the beginning of the stream, about like otakus and about people, sort of writers writing stories that they liked but don't really understand how to make the good version of the stories. Because I think that was like the central problem with My Little Dashie, really, because the writer of My Little Dashie, like a lot of people really liked My Little Dashie. They thought it was emotional and they had a good cry about it, which, I mean, I guess I don't really begrudge them that. Like, it's nice that he was able to connect with his audience. But when I was reading it, I just got really frustrated because it's essentially just a story about a fat man sitting on a couch, turning a very athletic and active and goals-oriented pony character into a fat pony who sits on a couch and cries all the time. Right, like it's a story about child abuse, which the author doesn't seem to realize is going on. And I think the reason why the story's so much like that is because the author is, himself just sort of sitting on a couch playing video games all day long, and doesn't really have that. Yeah, that life experience and everything. So the stories that they wind up telling are the stories that they know, and since they don't really know any stories besides, well, I watch cartoons and I play Xbox, that becomes all their characters do is watching cartoons, playing Xbox, and
Yeah, what I do when I write fan fiction is I crib from experience, but I try to, like, not just my experience, but I'll be like, grilling my mom, like. So when I was a baby, what do you remember about that period of time? And then I would use that in the story, Or I remember there was the 23,000 word story that I wrote recently. Like I set one scene in a town that I know in New Hampshire, but that but it was still the characters acting like the characters. But
do you mind if I ask whereabouts that was?
Up in the White Mountains, North Conway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Most years, my brother lives up that way, so most years I'll go up there kind of around the leaf peeping season, and we'll go up to the White Mountains and we'll stop at North Conway because we kind of like that. We kind of like that little town there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't live there myself, but some of my family lived up in New Hampshire, not further south, but we would take like visits to the White Mountain area. We're out in
my brother lives on the seacoast, but he
okay, like oh god, I mean, there's like 2 miles of seacoast. What was the town there?
Well, Portsmouth is the major.
Yeah, Portsmouth.
Yeah,
that's the one.
But he's outside of Portsmouth in Dover.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was like, I need a location in roughly the northeastern U.S. So I just went with one that I knew. So I will cop to that. I project things from my own experience into the story, but I try to like make it the kind of experiences that would reach audiences that didn't have that same experience, you know?
To tie it back into Babylon 5, it's kind of, I think there might be an aspect of it of just like asking really obvious questions of yourself.
Yeah.
The character says, "Who am I? What do I want? Why am I not getting what I want?" Right? Like you're asking you ask yourself these basic questions in life, and if you can ask those questions about characters, you can and answer them. You can tap into some really good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then since I've been writing a lot of stories with MCU Tony Stark and his daughter because I thought that was adorable in Endgame.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so for that I had that's where I've been grilling my mom. Like when I was a little girl, what were some of the things I did? You know, like just to use that as material for
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You know, drawing on the expertise of other people to help you.
Other people that have actual life experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got some life experience. Actually, that wraps back to something that we were talking about much earlier in the stream about people not having the life experience to understand the deep structure of different stories. I think that as your boy Zach said something recently about how he thought comics should really be a phase and not something that you do for your entire life. I don't know if either of you.
So that's similar to the Miyazaki thing with the yelling at otakus for just spending their whole lives wrapped up in mangas and anime, I guess.
Yeah,
I distinguish between what you read and what you make, because obviously if you're going to be an artist, that's a time investment, right? Like you don't want to become a master artist and then say, well, I guess I'm writing novels, no more art. But you should be reading everything. Yeah, you should read the great books. Like I always tell people who hate manga, read some manga. I try to introduce the weeb zoomers to some good Western stuff. Get different toolkits in your imagination tool belt.
Yeah, and I think, I think one of the things that some of the modern writers might be suffering from now is the fact that they have been, writing comic books their whole life and are kind of shut-ins otherwise. So they don't really spend a lot of time expanding their mind and expanding their experience. And
or they're Chuck Wendig and they're banning archive.org off the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's just because he doesn't want any evidence left, on the internet of what he did. So.
The TIE fighter wibble wobbled,
Hercules.
wobbly over.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't believe Chuck followed. Maybe he did some good stuff, but it is kind of irritating that he'd go after archive.
And what interested me initially about your boy Zach's videos and why I signed up for his channel and all that is it sounded what he was talking about sounded very, very similar to what was going on in the literary science fiction fandom around 2015, which I wouldn't say I was at the center of that, but I was definitely in like the inner suburb of that.
Okay, what was going on with that then? I'm not familiar. Was there like a science fiction gate or something?
In a sense, yeah. Except it was called the Sad Puppies.
Okay, was Vox Day involved in it at all? Or
Vox Day was involved in something called the Rabid Puppies, which stole the Sad Puppies idea, but now
typical Vox Day. All right.
Yeah, and he stole the Sad Puppies idea and a lot of like the Sad Puppies picks for the Hugo Award. He stole those too. So now everyone like associates us like we're the same group, and it's really not the case that we're the same group. We're two different groups.
Yeah.
But so when I started listening to Zach's channel, like it was a lot of the same things, like a lot of the same themes that different groups of dissatisfied fans were all being lumped together in this one group that we could dismiss as essentially sick Zerb, as Dennis Prager turns it. Sexist, intolerant, racist, bigot. We dismiss them all as racist, bigot, Nazis. When it turns out that if you break them down into their constituent groups, there's a lot of different facets to what I would call a consumer revolt, and most of those facets have nothing to do with the bullshit that they try to smear us with. So when Zach started talking about how people that were Comicsgate or Comicsgate adjacent via the cheese touch, like I got that. I was like, yeah, that's the exact same thing that happened to my group of people in 2015. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's Gamergate was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of regret my actions back then now, because I wasn't, completely neutral, but I tried to be sort of moderate and just be like, yeah, you know what, I'm not gonna get involved, whatever, it is what it is, blah blah blah. Both sides have their valid arguments, and the more I think about it, looking at what's happened to all these other fandoms, and I'm like, you know what, I should have been on D-Day. I should have been storming the beaches.
Yeah, I'm not a gamer at all.
Yeah.
So the first time I picked up on the Gamergate themes is when the Sad Puppies picked up in the following year, and it was basically the same crap,
Yeah, Gamergate was completely right. I eat my words now.
Yeah, and like even now the parallels are so strong. So you have in literary science fiction fandom right now, there are a lot of people that still keep wanting to talk about Sad Puppies, even though we have moved on. Like, we're like, screw this. We're going to go to Dragon Con and the Dragon Awards. We're moving on.
I meant to ask, what's the origin of the name Sad Puppies? Like, did someone say, oh, you guys are a bunch of sad puppies, and then you took that as a name for yourselves as a joke? Or
no, it was an author by the name of Larry Correa, who writes some pretty good
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. He wrote the Monster Hunter International series.
Oh.
Well, he's in the middle of writing those because they're not quite done yet. And he also wrote kind of a steampunky fantasy, and he's writing an epic fantasy right now too. He's in the middle of that as well.
I think Mrs. Punchy is familiar with that, but I'm not. But that might be where I've heard the name.
Yeah, but it originated with him because he shared this thing that one of his fans made where it was a video with the kind of Sarah McLachlan song that they always play over the animal shelter commercials, and it was saying, these puppies are all sad because every year at the Hugo Awards, you can predict who's going to be nominated before the nominations even come out, et cetera, and so forth. All these puppies are sad because of that. And that's where, like, Sad Puppies came from. It was,
okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was, and, the original Sad Puppies was like, let's try to get some fresh meat into this process, because it's basically like a bunch of the same people nominating all of their friends.
My god, that bastard! So that wasn't Vox Day that said that originally, then?
No, it was Larry.
Oh god, because I've heard that Hugo Awards.
Vox Day was a later parasite on this.
Yeah, because Vox, when Stefan started going, really sort of hardcore alt-right, Vox Day was a frequent guest on his channel, and he'd sort of do these streams with Vox Day, and I believe Vox Day was talking about that, like the Hugo Awards, and you can predict, and then he'd have, the list of whatever, sort of non-literary, progressive stack kind of things would get them in. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And I guess Vox just stole that.
Yeah, he straight up stole that from Larry Correia and Brad Torgerson, who was also a major player in that. So
remember when he tried to trademark Comicsgate?
Yeah.
That's. I mean, by that point, I was already sort of used to him from all the Molyneux stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty hard.
I know who this is.
Yeah. But people who are kind of in my crowd with that, we really, really dislike Vox Day because he kind of parasitized our consumer revolt. Now we just keep getting tarred with his name, no matter what we say or what we do. So,
well, it was kind of like Irene and Gamergate. I don't know whatever happened to him.
This is part. So this pattern of problem for Gamergate, Comicsgate, and Sad Puppies is part of the reasons why I've kind of like tried to move on from some. Not in the sense that I've given up on the fight, but in the sense that I kind of got sick of the meta discussion of Gamergate. Unless it's like, what can we learn from Gamergate so that we don't repeat the mistakes in the future, right? Yeah. I feel like if you make culture that changes the game a bit, where you made the hip new thing, now they have to try to cancel you because they just realized you made the hip new thing. Whereas if we're talking about how they're ruining our things, we're really easy to ignore. We're just random harassment campaigns on Twitter, right? But creation is the best weapon.
Yeah. Yeah, and and in fact, people who are sad puppies have kind of done that sort of, well, let's move on. So the ones that actually identified as sad puppies, they're now publishing independently. They've got their own little small houses going, and they're really pumping up the Dragon Awards as an alternative.
That's good.
Yeah, so
they've got their own chazzes, then their own sad puppy, or to be spazzes, sad puppy autonomous zones.
Yeah. So and there's a lot of like discussion of how can we, disentangle ourselves from this sort of toxic mainstream publishing culture environment, and I see, the creators that are Comicsgate associated, a lot of them are doing that as well. So, and I think Marmon's right that that's really the best way to go, is just let that toxic mainstream environment burn to the ground, and go off in an escape pod and do your own thing. Like,
yeah, I mean that was the right call now, with hindsight with Corona, but yeah. And I also the other thing that
to go back to what we started the podcast with, which was Thinking Critical's video, I appended a comment on the bottom of that video saying, "What about Civil War?" Because I feel that while there are individual issues in the Civil War event that I really, really enjoyed, as you well know, Punchy,
Yes.
I feel like that's another thing that happened in the comics that ended up ruining comics for all time afterwards. Like, because then what happened after Civil War was all the writers wanted to go back to, how can we turn the heroes against each other again? Like,
I had did you guys see my quote unquote debate with Matt Reese about Civil War?
No, what was that?
It was pretty funny because he had me on. I basically said, yeah, I kind of hate Civil War and I think it ruined the Marvel Universe, but I think it'd be okay if it weren't canon. And then his debate was, yeah, you're right, but I actually don't think it would have been good even then. So it was like a debate between two people who hate it, and I was just like marginally defending. I was marginally playing the devil's advocate while secretly hating it too.
So it's like, who can hate it harder? Like,
and then you like make his debate, and I'd say, oh yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, now I completely hate it. I don't even have like that little devil's advocate argument anymore.
God, what was that? The your 1% tax hike doesn't go or goes too far. My 1% tax hike doesn't go too far enough.
Yeah,
little tiny disagreements, but
no, I don't think it. Not only do I think it should be in Elseworld, I think it should be completely expunged from the history of comics.
I don't know. Well, oh god, because actually, speaking of kind of weirdos and like the Alex Jones kind of stuff. Because I remember when Civil War was coming out, like I was sort of dabbling in those like Alex Jones conspiracy theory podcasts.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time very distinctly there were some individuals who were doing a series on like CIA influences on media and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that they were getting very concerned about was this idea of civil war and disorder, and like the Purge and the Civil War in the Marvel continuity. And at the time they were like, oh, they're pushing people to be divided, and they want people to hate the neighbors, and they want everyone to be violent and rioting, and we're going to get to a time when civil war will be a genuine thing that Americans will think could happen the next day. And I remember at the time I was like, that's silly, that's not going to happen. And then now it's like daily on Twitter. It's like, well, maybe
I just don't think it's I don't think it's the CIA or the aliens. It's all the devil. The devil is behind all the conspiracy theories.
Maybe. I mean, it could be. I mean, something's definitely been going on. But I personally blame Civil War for that. Like the Marvel.
So Civil War is responsible for our current day Civil War in 2020.
Yeah, specifically that.
So not only did it ruin the Marvel universe, but it ruined the real universe.
It brought down Western society. Entire civilization destroyed because of Captain America punching Iron Man.
All civilization is destroyed. Yeah. Yeah, the problem that I have with Civil War is like the only way it works is if you ignore like the previous 40 years of Iron Man canon. Like, but that's me speaking as someone who has the esoteric knowledge about Iron Man. Because
I mean, you'd hope that if somebody got hired to write an Iron Man story, they'd bother to go back and
familiarize themselves with. Yeah.
I read a kind of pretentious essay arguing that the intention of Civil War was to present Iron Man as the new symbol of America post 9/11, and kind of like as let's have the Patriot Act, let's use the powers of government to prevent this from ever happening again. right? And basically their argument was that like Captain America is presented as like sort of a good guy, but their argument was that he's supposed to be like the straw man who gets knocked down, and then Iron Man is the real hero of the story they're trying to promote. And I didn't get that vibe. Like my problem with that argument was I just got the vibe that Marvel didn't want to tell a hero villain story, so they kind of copped out of it by having both of them be dicks.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
I mean, maybe the intent was to have, you know, the whole 9/11 kind of thing, but they failed then, basically. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and because I'm the Iron Man girl, when I was doing like the full read through and I got to that era, I was reading a lot of like the Iron Man tie-ins to that. And what they were doing was they like the poor people who were writing Iron Man at that time, I think it was the Knobs, they basically had to sit there and like backdoor justify what was happening in the Civil War event because it didn't line up with Iron Man canon at all. Like, and I suppose like what they tried to do sort of made sense, but you could tell it was like, oh crap, we've been told that he's supposed to be on the patriotic side of things, but you know, in Armor Wars he was acting against the government, so that makes no sense. So how do we make this make sense? Like, and you could see them really reaching for it, you know.
Could it be like a pod person kind of twist or something? Like it gets revealed later that these aren't actually the characters; they're just some kind of pod people.
Well, you know, Iron Man did die in the mid-90s.
Like canonically, yeah.
And then like resurrected. That's there. You know, there's an argument that's been made, and it's not I'm not necessarily going to put it aside out of hand that when he died in the mid-90s, like any Iron Mans after that were not the real guy. Like,
yeah, because that's kind of what they did with Lobo, actually.
Yeah.
Because Lobo, I forget when they brought in the new Lobo, but that was before Comicsgate really hit, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, oh god, this is going to be horrible for the rest of comic book fans when this gets mainstreamed. I think Lobo was one of like the early test cases to see what they could get away with, because he wasn't quite as popular. But basically, I mean, you're not familiar with the reboot of Lobo,
no,
I'm assuming.
No.
All right. But basically what they did was like the 90s Lobo, you know, the Lobo everybody liked was this big buff, you know, alpha male, really masculine, blew stuff up, and loved space dolphins for some reason.
Okay.
He was great. But they redid him as a very skinny, beachy looking like pretty boy. You know, the original Lobo, or the original 90s Lobo, had a backstory where he'd basically like the inverse of Superman. Like he was the sole survivor from an alien planet, but his planet was destroyed by him as a result of a school science fair project, where he'd created like a plague of like mutant scorpion flies or something that destroyed his entire planet. So, you know, but in this new reboot, nothing like that happened. You know, he was like some like prince or like a bodyguard for a prince, and he was very noble and everybody liked him. And, you know, completely the opposite of everything that Lobo had going on. And during the course of this sort of new like soy reboot of Lobo, they had him like kill off the old Lobo and be like, oh, you know what, I'm the new Lobo and I'm going to be forever. And I think they wound up killing him off because nobody liked him, but they were thinking of bringing back a character that looked like the old Lobo but was really the new Lobo. So he'd have the same physical features as the 90s Lobo, but he'd act like the soy Lobo. And that didn't really get anywhere either. Like I think they think they eventually decided to retcon that. But
it's another thing where it's like, if you wanted to do an Elseworlds where it's serious Lobo, that might be a fun thing. Yeah. Oh, it's the guy I like, but he's completely different, right? But when they do, like, I've heard that pattern over and over again of, oh, well, we're going to kill off the old thing you like to teach you a lesson. Readers, aren't we? We're toying with how much we can tease you, and I don't know. Like, my attitude towards anyone who writes anything with a character that existed before them is, you have a completely different job than a creator. Like, as a creator, you get to make up your space prince, whatever you want to make. But if you do not like the character you're writing for, I basically see it as you have a job to. It's part of your job to understand that character enough to write him correctly.
Yeah, just at least try. But I mean, I don't know. So when I hear stuff like this about, you know, like Tony Stark completely changing, I'm wondering if maybe this is like, maybe not like Space Prince Tony Stark, but maybe like Space Bum Tony Stark or something. Like, he came from another planet where he never got over his alcohol addiction, and he's complete failure at life, and then he comes to Earth and, you know, takes over as
like chemicals in the water that make the writers gay.
Yeah.
They put chemicals in the water to make Tony Stark not the Tony Stark that he was in the OG.
Something like that. Like, maybe it's that kind of thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, because there was definitely a shift after the Crossing, when they killed off Tony Stark and brought back like a child version of him, and that's one of those like storylines that I despise.
They did that with Lobo too.
Yeah, but like after that happened, that was like when Iron Man sort of jumped the shark, because then all the writers after that didn't really know how to write him in a way that aligned with the original era. Now, that being said, there is some stuff in the modern era that I like, but basically what I have to do in my head is say, okay, this is the modern interpretation. Like, you know, this is the modern interpretation. But hey, I like this part. This actually feels a little bit more like the original guy, you know? Yeah, so like I was talking about the Knopfs, and I think the reason why I was able to at least tolerate Civil War and not be like Matt Reeves and be like, it must be expunged from comics history entirely, is that afterwards, the Knopfs did this whole storyline where basically he's tortured by what he had to do in that conflict, and he's so tortured, he's like hallucinating all of his dead friends that have died, you know, like so because they put that in there, like I can sort of reconcile myself to it. It's like,
so it has some merit, you're saying, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, okay, well, at least like the way he's behaving in Civil War doesn't really fit what I know about Tony Stark, but at least he feels bad about it afterwards. Like,
okay, well, I think I'm going to be a contrarian again too, but because I'm thinking about it, you know, and again, it seems like the thing that people are really upset about is this idea of, you know, just sort of disrespecting the things that you like, and not letting you have the thing that you love, and, you know, sort of pushing it away. Like saying Elsewhere, for example, the whole problem with saying Elsewhere is that they basically just said, yeah, you know, your thing doesn't exist, yeah, right? Yeah. But the thing is, even the crap though, like there's got to be somebody out there who really likes it, right? Like, I mean, there are people who genuinely love the Civil War storyline, right? Yeah. And I'm sure there's like maybe like 2 people that like Squirrel Girl, you know, the new run of Squirrel Girl. So it's like, if we go back and like let's say that I got a job writing the next Squirrel Girl, right? Yeah. You know, my temptation would be to, like, you know, kill off old Squirrel Girl horribly and then bring her back in, you know, this sort of real Rob Liefeld kind of way, just to be like, yeah, you know.
Yeah,
like it's my turn now. But would that be would that be just as bad? Like, shouldn't we preserve the crap too, for the sake of the people who really do enjoy the crap, right? Like,
I prefer kind of I don't know, like a
synthesis,
experimental digital model. Like put out your crap, put out the crap on digital comics, also, and let's have like a I don't know, let's have like a gladiator arena where the cream rises, and I'd have lots more Elseworld. I talk about Elseworlds all the time because it's the perfect breeding ground. Because if you make something that's great, you can make it into movies, you can make it into spin-offs, and if you make something that sucks, well, who cares? It's an alternate universe. It's an alternate story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's always been my approach too. Like I remember actually doing something like that when the new Mortal Kombat was coming out. Trying to be like a voice of reason to people that were, the sort of old school fans that were getting upset, and the robots that were like, oh, it's not that bad. But like I don't see why everyone can't have what they want, right? Like there are some people
nowadays when it's much easier to publish something.
Yeah, it's so easy to publish things. It's so easy to cater to a lot of different niches and to have these niches all be satisfied, right? Like we're not living in an era of broadcast television where everybody needs to consume the exact same thing. So you've got to make compromises, right? And we're living in an era where people can have, like if I want my dinosaur comics guy writing a fun, funky squirrel girl that's, complete bullshit, I can have that, right? Like, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sacrifice your things. Like with the Mortal Kombat thing, one of the big issues was the character designs, and like some people hated them, some people loved them. But like with video games, you can get DLC and you can get many different character designs. So why not just have character designs that the old school fans would enjoy, and character fans that the video game journalists would enjoy, and character designs that the community could create. You could have so many things for so many different people, but for whatever reason,
that assumes that people are well intentioned and they want to succeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, because Mortal Kombat is now owned by DC, and I don't really trust them. So, they've been sort of caught up in a whole kind of Comicsgate bullshit world too. But I think in a rational world, that would be kind of where we'd be going. Though I think that we should be going towards a world in which wokies and based and normies can all enjoy themselves.
So Zach's floated the idea of something like Japanese doujinshi, which I desperately want something like this, where we basically recognize we live in a world where you can pirate anything. We live in a world where you can share anything. So why don't we use this technology for the best application? So like basically have, I don't know, call it marvelfanfiction.net. Right. And then like everybody can make it. And if you draw your like weird Wolverine fan fiction, but you come up with Super Wolverine, I don't know, like you get 10% royalties if they ever make a movie with Super Wolverine.
Isn't that like DeviantArt and Patreon now?
Right, and you can already go and do your fan fiction stuff on DeviantArt and Patreon. I'd like basically, I don't know, some kind of avenue for it to get monetized more easily. And the problem
like
is,
an
of course,
official way to get monetized. Then,
right. Okay, but the problem is you're then opening yourself up to like every creepy interpretation of your characters possible. I think companies don't want to do that, but independent people, it's a lot easier for me. So it's a lot easier for me to say, look, if someone wants to write a comic book about Jane Smith wannabe gladiator, I'm going to be totally open to blessing doujinshi about like I can't bless your horrible, terrible ideas for Jane Smith wannabe gladiator. Well, I will at least say you can make fan fiction, and I may not like it, but I like the idea of you creating something, even if I don't like what you create. And maybe I will like what you create, but right. So an independent creator has a lot more leeway to do that than a corporation which is worried about its corporate image.
Yeah. I wonder exactly though how many scruples Marvel actually has if we're writing Cyclops wanting some hairy Wolverine ass.
You're allowed to do anything as long as it's not right of center. any perversion except having like Wolverine come on saying, actually, you know what? I think
Wolverine wants to get married. He wants to get married and have a family, and maybe start a farm somewhere.
That's one of the speaking of getting married, that's one of the interesting divergences, and I talk about it in that video Fetchy Watch Punch, between MCU Tony Stark and the comic version of Tony Stark, because the comic version of Tony Stark is very much I can't possibly get married when my heart could give out at any time, right? Whereas MCU Tony Stark gets married, like which for the MCU, that's a based element of the MCU. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if Marmaduke has been watching any of those Tony Stark, or as many of them as I have, but he's very soy at times, unfortunately.
Oh yeah,
I watch like the Avengers movies with my friends. I don't know all the details of the Avengers of the Marvel universe.
the comic specifically.
The comic.
I mean, yes. I mean, he's kind of a good soy. You know, he's a very sort of moral, upstanding soy, but he's got problems. He has to get the Chad Tony Stark to come in and kick him around for a bit.
Yeah. He's talking about like early on in the Tales of Suspense run, where he's in love with Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan is in love with Pepper Potts. So Tony lets Happy have her, basically.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and then he spends the rest of the time moping about it, and it just turns into this whole big love triangle with everybody's going after each other, and nobody's happy, and it's
because Pepper's like really into Tony until Tony like deliberately puts her off. And then after he deliberately puts her off, then he spends the time moping, I wanted her to not be connected to me because I could die at any time. And yet, why do I still feel so sad about it? Like,
I mean, I guess it's there's a certain romantic charm to it. At least if you're a billionaire or a millionaire, as it was, and you're handsome and you got a robot suit, you can overlook that kind of behavior in that case. It's more when you're sort of the broke wheezy nerd that sort of behavior becomes problematic. But
billionaire vampire doctors, it's all over in burlesque novels,
And then on Twitter, I just shared the issue number 3 from the 1968, where this wasn't him being soy necessarily, but him being like, Happy was helping me build my new suit so I could unplug from the wall. And oh no, he accidentally got turned into the freak, and it's my fault. And I'm just sitting here going, well, you couldn't possibly have known that that's what was going to happen. Why are you blaming yourself? He's got this, like, OG Tony Stark has this insane guilt complex. If anything goes wrong around him or that is related to him in any way, he just, like, takes all the responsibility, even if it really wasn't his responsibility, whatever it was that happened. So... that's not specifically soy, but
Oh god, yeah. I was looking up the tweet, and I've just been barraged by stuff about the moon hex from from Matt C. I don't know if you knew that. I mean, it's kind of off topic, but
the moon hex.
Yeah, the moon hex is just everywhere on my Twitter timeline. I can't find your tweet, unfortunately, but. I guess you got upstaged by the moon.
I guess so.
I don't get that meme yet.
I don't think it's a meme. It's just sad. Really. I mean, it might be turning into a meme now, but are you familiar with it, right, Geek? Or have you been?
No, I don't know what that is. That's
okay.
not
Well,
it's people saying there's some confusion about the moon, and I'm going to take some time to explain it or something like that.
No, it's very. You're not going to be able to guess it. It's TikTok. Apparently, there was some witches on TikTok, the witch talk community. They believe that they cast a hex upon the moon, and now the fairies and Apollo and Artemis are all mad at witches. So witches across the world cannot cast their spells because the moon has been hexed, and there are these big, long philosophical discussions about what exactly it means to have the moon hexed and why your witch powers aren't working, and whether or not the gods and the fairies are actually affected by the hex, or whether they're just mad at you that you'd be, sort of affronting them by trying to hex them, and who's trying to hex the moon, and was it some fluffy bunny witch talkers, or was it like an experienced witch who knew what she was doing? I don't know. It's this whole big witch thing.
What I hear you saying is, Marmaduke, go chop some wood to burn some heretics at the stake. That's what I got.
Yeah, it's kind of getting to that point.
I guess I didn't see that because, the people I follow are like James Lindsay at New Discourses and stuff.
Yeah. No, this is from Matt Krotz.
Oh.
I mean, you guys know Matt.
I love Matt Krotz.
Yeah.
He's keeping up with the witch controversy.
Yeah, he and a lot of his mutuals, I guess, have been going after witches. I mean, going after witches for being silly, not for burning them.
Not actually.
I'm disappointed he's not burning them. That needs to be fixed.
I detect heresy.
Oh God!
Time for a new witch hunt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just God. The stories I can tell you about witches and silly stuff they get into, but
one nice thing J.K. Rowling did is she confirmed that there are no Wiccans who are witches and wizards in the Harry Potter universe.
Oh, really?
Right, which means that they're just a bunch of moron muggles in J.K. Rowling's world who think they're witches and wizards, and none of them are.
That's pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like witches either. Even in occult circles, they're kind of the they're like the juggalos or something. The occult circles, they don't get much respect.
And then there's like the serious neckbeard occulters who want to start a cult.
Yeah, like the hipster ones that are like, And then you've got the hipster Wiccans who hate the fluffy bunnies. There's a whole big like social hierarchy.
And then like the black shaman who think it's problematic if you don't do your witchcraft right, because you could be stealing it from a marginalized group.
Yeah, I mean it all just kind of goes up to eventually you get to like the Epsteins and everything, those kind of guys. But everybody below that is just kind of dumping on each other.
Well, there's so much just normal people on Twitter talking about this naked protester as a form of witchcraft. It's enough people. You can tell that there are several million people who believe if you get naked in front of the police that it has magic powers.
Okay.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I should know this about humanity by now. It's a different thing.
If
seeing it in front of you,
believe in something, they'll believe in anything. Isn't that
right.
how? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, people tend to keep, and actually, because this was actually something I was going to be discussing with Matt on one of his shows that got cancelled, but because with it's sort of long and convoluted, so I'll try and get straight to the point. Because with Chris Chan, and I actually genuinely think that Chris Chan is a legitimate religious figure, like spiritual figure. and oh god, I don't even know how to explain this without taking like 3 hours. But yeah, I think one of the things is that as people are losing like sort of traditional religious faiths, older religious faiths are going to resurface and just sort of be expressed. Specifically animism, at least in the sense of Christian and moe anime culture and things. As you get these increasingly secularized worlds, right? You're sort of pushing out the Christianity and the Islam and the Buddhism. People aren't going to go atheist. They're going to go straight back to magic and animism and doing naked protests and things, witch talk and stuff. So,
well, that's because I think that humanity just evolutionarily has a natural religious impulse.
Yeah, I mean, well, most people do. I mean, I think there are some people who don't. But yeah, there's enough people that, just because of their psychological makeup or whatever, their sort of preferences and stuff, that they need something like that in their lives, and if they don't have it, they'll go find it, by hexing the moon or something.
Yeah. Time to hex the moon. I'm trying to find my tweet. Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh my god, actually, is that true?
What is?
There's an individual here that says the first meal eaten on the moon was Holy Communion, which hexes have no power over it. Which
I wonder if
actually might be true, because it's followed by a bunch of, like, I thought it was a joke, but it's followed up by a bunch of posts about astronauts. So it's quite possible that the astronauts.
It only takes a couple Catholic astronauts for that to be feasible. Yeah.
Yeah,
wait. How would they bless it though? Wouldn't you need to bless the? Wouldn't a Catholic need to bless it? Consecrate the elements.
Yeah,
I'm sure my Calvinist. I don't know how this works.
They probably consecrated it in advance, and then just put it in a safe receptacle.
Okay.
Because you can't.
What if a consecrated element got lost in space? What would the Catholic Church do?
That's a good question.
How the hell did I never know that? That's weird. I mean, well, I guess that makes sense that I wouldn't know that, because they wouldn't. Oh, okay. Right here it says NASA worry the Christian ceremony may draw unwanted scrutiny. But it says that Buzz Aldrin took a communion on the moon while they were sitting there. Neil Armstrong landed for the first time. So actually, the very first time human beings landed, they had Holy Communion.
Wow.
On the moon.
Yeah. Well, in the Catholic Church, we have something called extraordinary Eucharistic ministers that are allowed to take. They're trained and they're allowed to take a consecrated host to. Generally speaking, you use them to take them to people who are homebound, so that they can take communion even though they can't get to the church because of their illness or whatever. So maybe it was something like that. Yeah, but if they had like opened up the tin and it had floated away, like, uh-oh. I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that if your church is on fire and you have to rescue the host that's in the tabernacle, like, it's permissible for the priest to eat it. Like
they've gotten that specific for ethics of it. Huh.
Yeah. And there was
so I guess my story about Eucharist stuff is I went to a Lutheran school, and Lutherans are closer to the Catholic. They're not identical to the Catholic doctrine, but they were closer to the Catholic doctrine than I was, in that they believe there's like a spiritual sense. It becomes the body and blood of Christ. So I was in a play at the Lutheran school, and they asked me to paint a prop for them. So I paint the prop and I go looking around. Okay, I got to wash my paintbrushes. I see a sink and I wash it out. And then someone sees me washing it out in the sink.
Yeah.
And that was the sink that was specially set aside.
Yeah.
For the communion wine.
Oh no. Oh no!
So they just kind of like coughed and said, "We're not going to tell anyone about this."
Oh no! Yeah,
Okay,
the Catholic Church is super specific about how you handle the host as well. So,
okay. Do either of you know anything about Presbyterian churches?
I am not a Presbyterian, but I've read some Presbyterian theology, but I don't know much about the Presbyterian theology of the Mass. They wouldn't call it the Mass. I don't know the Presbyterian theology of the Supper.
Because it says here that Buzz is actually an elder at the Webster Presbyterian Church or something. So it sounds like he may have consecrated it himself while he was on the moon.
Well, if he's Presbyterian, then it's not a Catholic Mass. It's
no, it's
so
that wouldn't for me a Catholic.
Maybe something else then. Yeah. It's not a Catholic Mass, but it's some kind of.
It's some kind of Christian thing. Yeah.
It'd just be like it'd be a Protestant Lord's Supper, basically.
Yeah.
So, and he probably wouldn't need. He actually probably wouldn't need a priest to consecrate it for him. Then he just enjoy the Lord's Supper on the moon, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, even this says it's Holy Communion, but I mean, maybe they just use that as like the headline, and then.
So I think R.C. Sproul would be a good explanation. My 101 understanding of it is that Calvin is kind of like the key guy for Presbyterians, and Calvin believed that it becomes the body and blood of Christ spiritually, but not physically. So it doesn't physically become blood and flesh. And then kind of like the normie evangelical explanation is more, it's just something we do to remember, to remember the Passover. So there's quite a few gradations from the Catholic transubstantiation to evangelical remembrance. Yeah. So I think Calvin would actually be closer to most Protestants than Luther would be closer to Catholics than Calvin would be. So that's interesting. Yeah. We got into I did it. I got us into all sorts of Supper, minor church history debate stuff.
It was really Matt's fault, unfortunately.
Right.
Well, it was originally by Geek because she got something on Twitter, and then Matt got us.
Well, it could be the Roman Empire's fault for creating Western civilization and putting us all in this situation. You just keep going back farther and farther. Adam and Eve are to blame for all of this.
Well, I mean, if you go back far enough, it's just it's just a snow globe and autistic boys.
And on that note, I think we can probably end for the night because it's starting to get late.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
Yeah, so the entire world could just be an autistic boy's daydream in a snow globe. Yeah.
Oh God. All right. Well, it was fun. It was a pleasure to talk to you all.
Yes, it was a pleasure to talk to you all.
It was a blast.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yay.
You dropped your crown, King.
Nice. All right.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you anyone out there who may be listening.
Yes. Good night, chat.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
All right.